Once upon a time, in a little second-floor walk-up over a taqueria that smelled like cumin and warm tortillas, Maya held a crisp $20 bill and a grocery list that read like a dare. Milk, bread, eggs, coffee, chicken thighs, apples, pasta, sauce, a green thing that reminded her she was trying. The list was written in her grandmother Ruth's looping hand, torn from a spiral notebook that had once been red, but after 50 years of kitchen sun had faded to a kind of ginger ale pink. The paper still carried a ghost of supermarket, dish soap, old lemon, something like cardboard. Ruth had passed the notebook to Maya the last summer before she died, between reruns of game shows and the hum of a window AC that rattled like a loose tooth. "You'll need this, honey," she'd said, tapping the cover. "It's not just recipes. It's how you feed a week with $20 and still have enough left for cinnamon gum." Maya had laughed because that felt easier than doing the math. $20 in 1974 might have been a magic carpet. In 2025, it was a bus ticket with an apology. But she kept the notebook anyway, tucked behind a row of mismatched mugs. Some nights, when the headlines looked like billboards shouting bad news, she'd flip through Ruth's notes. Pages of menus, coupon clippings like confetti, doodles of tomatoes that looked like hearts. Each week was a small triumph set to...
Once upon a time, in a little second-floor walk-up over a taqueria that smelled like cumin and warm tortillas, Maya held a crisp $20 bill and a grocery list that read like a dare. Milk, bread, eggs, coffee, chicken thighs, apples, pasta, sauce, a green thing that reminded her she was trying. The list was written in her grandmother Ruth's looping hand, torn from a spiral notebook that had once been red, but after 50 years of kitchen sun, had faded to a kind of ginger ale pink. The paper still carried a ghost of supermarket, dish soap, old lemon, something like cardboard. Ruth had passed the notebook to Maya the last summer before she died, between reruns of game shows and the hum of a window AC that rattled like a loose tooth. "You'll need this, honey," she'd said, tapping the cover. "It's not just recipes. It's how you feed a week with $20 and still have enough left for cinnamon gum." Maya had laughed, because that felt easier than doing the math. $20 in 1974 might have been a magic carpet. In 2025, it was a bus ticket with an apology. But she'd kept the notebook anyway, tucked behind a row of mismatched mugs. Some nights, when the headlines felt like billboards shouting bad news, she'd flip through Ruth's notes. Pages of menus, coupon clippings like confetti, doodles of tomatoes that looked like hearts. Each week was a small triumph set to pencil. Chili night, stretch with cornbread. Roasted chicken Sunday, soup by Wednesday. Buy the store brand unless you can taste the difference. On this particular October afternoon, with the light slanting in at a hopeful angle, Maya decided that she would try it. Really try. She'd bring only the notebook, a shopping tote, and the solitary 20 from her wallet. No credit card safety net. No phone calculator. Just Ruth's rules and the price stickers that felt like ransom notes every month. She shouldered the tote and headed down the stairs, past the chalkboard that listed the taqueria's specials, $2 Taco Tuesdays, scrawled like a secret, and onto the sidewalk where a cold wind chased a paper cup in circles. At the corner, a grocery store squatted in brick and neon. Flannery's Fresh, one of those independent markets that fought for survival next to the supermarket giants. Inside, the air smelled like citrus rinds and ground coffee. The rotisserie chickens sang their greasy siren song. A toddler proclaimed something to the rafters with the raw honesty of the under five. Maya pressed her fingers to the 20 in her pocket like a charm. She could do this, she told herself. People did this. Not everyone, not always, but people still found a way to turn a bill into a basket. Ruth's first rule, walk the perimeter. That was another of her scribbles, written on a page with a doodled fence. Fresh food on the edges, impulse in the middle. So Maya started near the produce, where mist hissed over lettuce like a stage effect. A pyramid of apples gleamed. Honeycrisps, $2.49 a pound. She did the weight-by-touch thing that Ruth had taught her, the gentle heft, the thumbs pressed near the stem, the instinct that told you, this one is crisp inside. She picked 3. The scale winked 1.8 pounds. She did the mental math like a kid taking a timed test. Call it $4.50. The 20 shrank by that much in her mind. Eggs. She chose a dozen of the store brand, the carton modest as a library book. Milk, a half-gallon, whole, because the extra fat would help, Ruth wrote, especially if you're stretching sauces. Bread, the kind with a short ingredient list and a long promise. She settled for the house
Bakery's country loaf on special. Coffee was tricky. She bypassed the artisanal bags with tasting notes that read like poetry about rain and scooped from the bulk bins. Enough for mornings, not enough to be fancy. Her basket grew heavier. Her 20 felt lighter. She could hear Ruth's other rules whispering. Lean cuts on sale, bone in if you can, bones make broth, broth makes stews. Pasta is a passport. Beans are a miracle if you season them like you mean it. In the meat section, she found chicken thighs with a bright yellow sticker, manager's special. They were the color of a sunset seen through cellophane. She tucked them in with the eggs like a small victory. Pasta and sauce next. The aisle was a canyon of choices, labels boasting heritage tomatoes, slow simmered, Nana approved. She remembered Ruth's neat, ruthless equation. Jar is fine, doctor it with garlic and patience. She chose a simple marinara, the cheap one, and a bag of penne whose cardboard sleeve looked like a postcard from Naples if you squinted. By the time she reached the green thing that reminded her she was trying, a bundle of kale, sturdy and proud, it no longer felt like a performance of adulthood. It felt like a conversation with someone who had done this before. She pictured Ruth in a knee-length denim skirt, slipping coupons from that red binder, counting nickels in a slow, certain way, humming something from the radio. She pictured her great-grandfather before Ruth, handing over a ration book and making, somehow, a celebration out of scarcity. At the checkout, the conveyor belt moved with the inexorable speed of time. The scanner beeped like a metronome. Maya set the 20 on the counter, smoothing it unconsciously, and watched the numbers climb. 319, 249, 179. The total flashed. It was close, closer than she expected, further than she hoped. She could feel a blush starting at her collarbone, the creeping heat of almost. She reached for the jarred sauce, ready to set it aside. "Hold up," the cashier said, a young guy with a name tag that read Ezra and a smile like a detour sign. "You got the app?" Maya shook her head. "Weekly deal on this sauce," he said, tapping the sauce, then the eggs. "Manager forgot to put the sign up." He glanced at the line, then at the ceiling, like he was checking for invisible cameras. "I'll price modify. Happens all the time." It knocked $2 off, and suddenly the 20 covered everything, with 83 cents clinking back like applause. Maya let out a breath she didn't know she'd stolen from her own lungs. On the walk home, she felt a strange buoyancy, as if she were walking not just along Maple Street, past the leaf-clogged curb, but along some thin, bright line that connected her to Ruth, and to Ruth's mother before her, and to thousands of hands that had learned to turn small bills into full tables. The bag bumped her hip like a friendly dog. The apples clicked softly together with the rhythm of footsteps. Back in the apartment, she set the groceries on the counter and the notebook beside them. On an empty page, she wrote in big letters, "The $20 project."
Below it, "Today, made it work. Ezra is a hero. Sauce tasted better than it had any right to. Remember, Bones make broth. Don't forget the green thing. And then, because this felt like the start of something, not just a budget challenge, but a story, she wrote a title at the top of the next page, like the header on a chapter you're about to walk into with your whole body. Then versus now. She underlined it twice, thinking of Ruth's grocery lists, of coupons like confetti, of Sunday chickens turning into Wednesday soup. She thought of all the moments when $20 had been a bridge instead of a wall. What if she followed that 20 across time, through Ruth's pantry, through her own, through the aisles where prices rose and fell like tides? What if she measured not just what the bill could buy, but what it meant, the choices it forced, the creativity it demanded, the small dignities it protected? Outside, a siren sang itself into the distance. Inside, the kettle clicked off, and the apartment filled with the smell of coffee that wasn't fancy, only faithful. Maya poured a cup, tore a page from the notebook, and started outlining the next part of the story, the one where she would hold the then in one hand and the now in the other, and see what spark leapt between them. "Okay," she told the room, and maybe also the past, "let's do this." The week after gas hit 55 cents, and the radio wouldn't stop playing Benny and the Jets, Ruth pinched a 20 from the coffee tin on top of the fridge and pinned a clothespin to it like a flag. The tin had once held butter cookies, now it held emergency hopes. Rent was paid, the Buick coughed but ran, and the kids, Maya's dad and Aunt Liz, had both outgrown their church shoes like it was a sport. Saturday morning was grocery day, a ritual more choreographed than the line dances at weddings. Ruth set the kitchen table like a command center, spiral notebook, pencil sharpened to the tenacity of a toothpick, tape collaged coupons fanned like playing cards, and a small ruler for trimming the Safeway circular. The coupons were a constellation of tiny economies: 10 cents off evaporated milk, 20 cents off spaghetti if you bought two. Double coupon day circled in green ink. She didn't clip ads, she curated them. On the back step, steam rose from her coffee like a good idea. The neighborhood was just waking up. Screen doors yawning, a dog thumping its tail against a fence, a kid hollering, "Ma, he's touching me," at a brother who had turned that into a vocation. Ruth tucked the 20 into her wallet between a faded school photo of the kids and a receipt that said, "Thank you for shopping, come back soon," which she took personally. At the store, the glass doors exhaled that refrigerated breath of citrus and Freon. Fluorescents hummed like bees. A teenage stockboy built a pyramid of canned peaches with the concentration of a watchmaker. The carts had a lopsided wheel that squeaked in a rhythm Ruth matched, step squeak, as she navigated the perimeter. First stop, produce. Prices rode on little white flags jabbed into the lettuce like beach umbrellas. She weighed cabbage with a practiced palm. Cabbage was a quiet champion. Slaw, soup, skillet fried with onions and a splash of vinegar until the whole house smelled like you meant business. She chose a head that felt like a bowling ball and cost like a blessing. Carrots by the bag, cheaper than loose. Russet potatoes, 5 pounds, their dusty skins promising baked, mashed, and home fries for a Sunday night breakfast for dinner. Onions, because everything started with an onion sweating in a pan, the scent of something's happening drifting down the hall. In the dairy aisle, she bent for milk like a catcher behind the plate. Store brand, a half-gallon with a cow that looked too cheerful to be realistic. Butter was a splurge, 1 pound stretched into pats wrapped in wax paper, rationed like little gold bars. Eggs brown because they were on sale, and, as she would later teach a granddaughter, brown and white taste the same unless the price says they don't. Then the meat case, cold light, cold math. Bone-in is budget's best friend, she'd written in her notebook, and the butcher, Mr. Al with a paper hat that looked like origami, knew to save her a tray of chicken thighs with the skin still on.
Flavor lives in the ugly parts, she'd say, sliding them into the cart with reverence. If there was a special on chuck roast, she'd grab a small one and picture it melting into pot roast by Sunday, then becoming Monday hash with a fried egg bravely on top. Aisle 4 was pasta, canned tomatoes, beans, and the no-nonsense poetry of pantry staples. She laid 2 boxes of spaghetti across the cart like bridge planks. Dried beans were an act of faith. Soak overnight, season like a sermon, feed an army. She took a 1-pound bag of pinto and another of navy, fingers dusted with their chalky promise. Canned tomatoes, whole, not crushed, whole could become anything. Flour and cornmeal went in next, not glamorous, but foundational. The stuff that made biscuits happen when there was stew to soak up, or cornbread when chili needed a hymn. A tin of baking powder, a bottle of vegetable oil, coffee in a metal can that thunked when she set it down, the sound of morning saved.
She steered past the serial cartoon mascots with the discipline of a saint, then performed the ritual of the treat triangle. Choose one treat the kids would recognize as love in a box. Sometimes it was a sleeve of vanilla sandwich cookies. Today it was a jar of peanut butter. The good kind was on special, because PB&J was not just lunch, it was a pact that no one left the house hungry. Her running total lived in her head like a metronome. 59 cents here, $1.19 there, the 20 shrinking, the meals multiplying like loaves and fishes. She was composing a week. Monday, spaghetti with red sauce, half loaf saved, salad if Mr. Jim leaves lettuce at the door again. Tuesday, chicken thighs roasted with potatoes and carrots, save the drippings. Wednesday, bean soup with ham hock, ask Mrs. Alvarez if she still has one in the freezer. Thursday, potato pancakes with applesauce, apples from the neighbor's tree traded for a pan of brownies. Friday, tuna noodle casserole, because fish on Friday felt like keeping faith with the universe, even if she wasn't sure the universe kept track. At checkout, the conveyor belt carried her intentions forward. The cashier, hair sprayed into a helmet and bangs like a visor, tapped prices that clicked into the register like a baseball card and bicycle spokes. Ruth laid down the 20 with a calm that was not denial, but decision. The total landed at $18.83. She exhaled. The coins that came back, 2 nickels, a dime, and 7 pennies, felt like confetti in her palm. She slid a single stick of cinnamon gum from the impulse rack with a wink at herself. Tradition mattered. Back home, she lined the counter like a parade and did what she loved most, turned groceries into a plan. Chicken thighs bathed in a quick marinade, mustard, oil, vinegar, a whisper of paprika, then into the fridge like tucked-in children. Beans into a bowl of water, little white moons rising as they softened. Potatoes in a paper bag under the sink, where they'd stay starchy and faithful. She labeled a coffee can drippings in capital letters because nothing that tasted that good should ever be a one-night stand. The notebook came out. Her cursive marched. Monday, spaghetti and red sauce, half loaf saved, salad if Mr. Jim leaves lettuce at the door again. Tuesday, roast chicken thighs, carrots, potatoes, save bones. Wednesday, bean soup with ham hock. Ask Mrs. Alvarez if she still has one in the freezer. Thursday, potato pancakes, fried apples, green beans if canned are still 19 cents. Friday, tuna noodle casserole, breadcrumb top from stale bread. Saturday, leftover medley, make it a buffet so the kids feel fancy. Sunday, pot roast if Al marks it down, else navy bean stew with cornbread. She underlined, save bones. She underlined, taste before you add salt. Add vinegar before you add more salt. She jotted a quote from a radio host. Luxury is a hot meal when the wind's at the window. Then she taped the Safeway circular to the inside cover like a trophy.
That night, after homework was negotiated and someone found the missing shoelace under the couch, dinner was spaghetti, with sauce that started as canned tomatoes and turned into something like a hug. The kids slurped, red mustaches printing their approval across cheeks. Ruth sat, fork poised, and let herself feel successful without apology. $20 hadn't just bought food, it had bought a week of solved problems, a rhythm to live by. Later, when the house had settled into the night's creaks, Ruth tucked the remaining change into the cookie tin and slid the notebook back into its spot by the phone, pencil clipped like a promise. Tomorrow would bring new arithmetic, school projects, a neighbor needing a ride, a storm in the forecast. But tonight, the kitchen smelled like tomatoes and garlic, and the sink held a pot rinsed clean. She didn't know her granddaughter would one day hold the same 20 in a different century, staring down barcodes with the same mix of grit and grace. She only knew that this week, on this budget, she'd pulled a little feast from a small number and made it feel like abundance. Maya didn't expect the produce to feel like a gallery exhibit, but there it was. Apples burnished like little sports cars, grapes glistening under a fine mist that whispered every 20 seconds as if to remind you that freshness had a soundtrack now. A sign above the Honeycrisps said, "Club price," and a smaller sign said, "When you buy 4+." A smaller than small sign said, "See app for details." The numbers looked like they'd been negotiated by lawyers. She halted the cart and did the math that never stopped anymore. She had her 20, the notebook, and her stubbornness. She also had a job that paid just enough to keep the refrigerator light honest and the rent tamed, and a country that kept rearranging the price tags like a magician, flicking cards and asking you to pick one, anyone, just don't blink. Flannery's had fought for her heart with warm lighting and a coffee roaster in the corner. The barista had tattoos like threadwork vines and said, "How's your day going?" with the sincerity that made the question briefly dangerous. Maya smiled and said, "Good," because sometimes a small lie was a cloak you needed when the wind kicked up. Ruth's notebook, ginger ale pink, edges soft like a well-used dishcloth, lay open in the child seat of the cart, her grandmother's cursive marching in loops. Unit price is the truth when the sign tells a story. Maya found the unit price sticker, tiny text under a big promise. She squinted, smiled. Ruth still knew how to shop here, even if the store had learned new tricks. The cereal aisle was a masterclass in shrinkflation. Boxes were thinner, the mascots puffing their chests as if volume could be faked by illustration. New look, same great taste, the fronts declared. The backs gave away the plot in grams. Maya turned a box sideways, comparing ounces the way you compare memories. She put it back. Oatmeal, then. Plain, stubborn, patient. You could dress oatmeal like a doll. Cinnamon one day, peanut butter the next, sliced apple if you caught a sale or had a neighbor with a generous tree. She passed a freezer case where single-serve meals blinked like TV channels. Mac and cheese in font size 72, a kale salad the color of aspiration, chicken something that promised home style in a tray you could recycle if you remembered to rinse. Heat and Eat said a sign, and for a moment her feet paused. Time had gotten so expensive that Heat and Eat had become a kind of mercy. But mercy had a price per ounce that made you swallow hard.
A mother with a stroller navigated the space like a ship through a narrow canal. A couple argued over salsa in the language of the lovingly annoyed. A man in a delivery vest scanned QR codes on a shelf like he was taking attendance. The store was a choreography of need and math and habit. Maya parked by the eggs, listening to Ruth. Eggs are an anchor if the price doesn't sink you. Then picked a dozen of the house brand, checking each for cracks through the cardboard windows. Milk, half-gallon, whole, because calories were currency in sauces and soups. Bread, the bakery's country loaf again, this time not on special, which felt like a small betrayal. She pivoted to the store-brand sandwich bread, with its honest squish and dependable toastability. The meat case was a negotiation with herself. Chicken thighs were back under their heat lamp halo of manager's special. But today, the yellow sticker bragged about family pack. The unit price was better if you bought more, which was the quiet math of poverty. The best deals presumed you could afford abundance. She weighed the choice like an engineer. The 20 couldn't carry a week's worth of thighs. She took the smaller tray, bone in and skin on, because flavor lived in the ugly parts, and broth lived in the bones, and tomorrow lived in both. Beans, canned or dried. Dried were cheaper, but they charged you in time. Canned were quick, but the sodium clung to your knuckles like glitter. She split the difference. 1 bag of dried pinto for the weekend, when the pot could hum all afternoon. 2 cans of navy for this week's I got home late but I still care stew. In the pasta aisle, a jarred marinara shouted about heritage tomatoes like someone's nana had a marketing degree. Maya picked the plainest label, the one that apologized for nothing. She knew what garlic and patience could do. She had Ruth's penciled notes like sheet music. A bag of penne slid into the cart with the satisfying weight of multiple dinners. Her green thing stopped being a joke when she reached for kale and saw the price. Spinach looked like it had been priced with a dare. She adjusted, a head of cabbage for less, as Ruth would have. It's humble until you make it sing, Ruth had written. A recipe for skillet cabbage annotated with, don't skimp the vinegar. Maya tucked the cabbage in and felt older in the best way. She let herself detour to the clearance rack, a wire shelf by the stockroom door where dignity went to be discounted. Bent canned goods, dented boxes, orphan cookies. Today it was a sack of bruised apples for almost nothing. The kind that looked like they'd had a rough day, but still wanted to be sauce. You and me both, Maya said, and added them to the cart, already picturing cinnamon and a pot riding steam on the kitchen window. The last thing was coffee. Bulk bin, scoop measured by ritual. She watched the numbers click on the scale and told herself the smell was part of her rent. There were luxuries you could live without, and luxuries that kept you living. At self-checkout, a polite screen asked if she had digital coupons. She did not. The app and she had broken up after it demanded her phone number, date of birth, and apparently her favorite childhood memory. The older cashier, kind-eyed with a lanyard decorated in enamel pins, drifted by. Want me to punch in the unadvertised egg special? They
Asked in a low voice, the same species of grace Ezra had offered before. Maya nodded, relief bubbling like a laugh she didn't want to be heard. The scanner beeped its neutral beep. The total stopped just shy of the 20 and then stepped over it like a cat ignoring a boundary. She pulled a jar of fancy-ish salsa, the one she'd grabbed without looking, set it aside. The total wavered, softened, came down. She fed the 20 to the slot and heard the machine count it like a judge reading verdicts. Change clinked into the tray with that ridiculous joy, coins like applause again. 81 cents, 2 pennies shy of last time. She pocketed them with the gravity they deserved. On her way out, she passed the community board, babysitting flyers with tear-off tabs, a guitar teacher who promised to unlock your inner Springsteen, a flyer about a neighborhood pantry that would be open Saturday mornings, leave what you can, take what you need. She took a photo of the hours without thinking. Maybe she would drop off a can of tomatoes next week. Maybe she would take a can one week. Maybe both could be true and neither would be a confession. Outside, October had that particular American light that made even cracked sidewalks look cinematic. She walked along Maple, tote thumping, notebook soft against her wrist. The 20 had stretched again, but only because it had been met halfway by luck, kindness, and the willingness to trade brand loyalty for pragmatism. She wondered how many of her neighbors were doing the same choreography today,
The same mental arithmetic while a song from 10 years ago played, and someone in a vest moved pallets in the back like Tetris pieces. Back in the kitchen, she unpacked the bag like a magician revealing props. Eggs into the fridge, milk tucked behind the yogurt that swore it expired yesterday but probably had another day of decency in it. Cabbage on the counter like a green planet. She sharpened her knife and read Ruth's notes aloud like spells. Start with an onion, let it speak. Vinegar before salt, save bones. The skillet hissed its agreement. The apartment filled with the smell of something's happening, the universal language of hope at 6:30 p.m. She tore the bruised apples into rough chunks and set them to tumble with a splash of water, a whisper of sugar, a cinnamon stick she'd been nursing since July. The pot breathed sweet steam onto the window until it fogged like a comforting lie. She opened the notebook and gave this day its line. Now, 2025, $20 buys less, but it still buys a plan. Hidden tax, time, attention, downloads. Hidden grace, people. Under that, she started a list titled Then versus Now. Under Then, she wrote coupons, double days, cashiers who knew your kids' names. Under Now, she wrote apps, unit price detective, work self-checkout saints with enamel pins. She left space between the columns like an aisle you could walk. Dinner was sautéed cabbage with garlic and a dash of vinegar, penne with jarred sauce, doctored like a patient who responded to kindness, and an egg fried hot so the edges went lacy and brown. It tasted like thrift dining in a fancy restaurant that only existed if you believed in it hard enough. She ate at the counter, fork tapping the bowl, the news in the next room mumbling about things she couldn't fix tonight. She stacked her dishes and looked at the notebook again. Then versus now, she murmured, thinking of Ruth rolling out biscuit dough with a
Glass when the rolling pin went missing, thinking of herself scanning barcodes like constellations. The line between them was not a straight one, but it held. She flipped to a fresh page, wrote the title for tomorrow's plan in big, bossy letters. The Ledger of Hidden Costs. She underlined it twice. The kettle clicked. The city exhaled. The 20 had done its work for another day, and the story kept going, price tags and all. The receipt said $19.19, but the number wasn't honest. Maya flattened the paper under her palm like a specimen slide and started counting the costs that didn't print in ink. First entry, time. 2 hours if you included the walk, the wandering, is the unit price lying, squinting, the line, the chat with the lanyard saint. Ruth's notebooks baked time right into the recipes. Soak tonight. Simmer tomorrow. Leftover Wednesday. Time was part of the meal. In 2025, time was billed like a lawyer. Her job sent messages shaped like emergencies. The world had turned the burner up under everyone's calendar. Second entry, apps as toll booths. The eggs were cheaper if she surrendered a birthday and a phone number. Pasta cost less if she played a gamified scratcher that coughed confetti on her screen. She did the math in willpower. 10 minutes to sign up. 20 to unsubscribe from the emails that arrived like pigeons who knew where the bread was kept. Ruth had clipped coupons with scissors that clicked in a friendly way. Maya clipped privacy. You could argue that both were choices. You could also argue that some choices came with a nudge you didn't notice until you were already moving. Third, getting there. Ruth had the Buick that coughed, a tank you filled for single digits, a glove compartment that collected church bulletins and maps that folded like origami cranes. Maya had shoe leather and a bus pass because she liked her planet and her budget. But still, the bus costs, the rain that meant rideshare, the tote bag that broke a strap and needed replacing. Some days the cheap store was far. The nearest one was nice and priced like a smirk.
Fourth, energy. Not the kind you paid the utility for, though that too, but the kind that kept you upright, patient, kind to the person blocking the aisle with a cart and a toddler and the 1,000-yard stare of someone doing 10 calculations at once. Ruth had written, "Eat before you shop. Hunger has an agenda." Maya added, "Sleep before you shop. Algorithms do too." Fifth, payment method. Cash was final. Swipe was a promise to your future self. Tap was a magic trick that sometimes pulled a rabbit named Overdraft out of a hat. Ruth's 20 couldn't bounce. Maya's debit card once did, on a Thursday when rent and groceries collided in a minor traffic incident. The fee felt like a laugh track from a mean sitcom. "You are broke, so we will charge you extra for the experience." She'd gone back to cash for the $20 project, like a ritual bath. She turned the receipt over and wrote "then" versus "now" in the notebook margin, making 2 skinny columns. Then, gas was cheaper, but cars ate repairs. Groceries were cheaper, but the stores closed Sundays and after 8. Double coupon day felt like a
cheating with permission. Cashiers recognized your kids' cowlicks and your favorite brand of tuna. Now, gas costs more, but bus routes multiply. Groceries cost more, but hours stretch late and early. Buy 4+ is a bridge that assumes a minivan and a freezer. The self-checkout says unexpected item in the bagging area, when what it means is I need you to prove you're honest. She thought about shrinkflation the way you think about a neighbor who used to wave. The peanut butter jar's waistline had slimmed, the sugar bag was newly fashionable. New look, same great taste, the boxes chirped, failing to add, less of it though. Ruth's pantry had been a place you could lean on, 5-pound sacks, gallon jugs. Modern packaging was portioned like a nudge towards scarcity, enough that you wouldn't notice until you did. Maya boiled water for tea and called her dad. He picked up with the sound of a game in the background, crowd noise rolling like surf. "Hey, Bug," he said. "Quick question," she said. "When Grandma did groceries, did she count the gas, the wear and tear, the coupons? Did they ever cost her in other ways?" He laughed softly. She counted everything. She'd say gas was a wash because the store was near church. We just combined trips before the internet turned that into advice. And coupons? She once spent 20 minutes haggling with a manager because the weekly circular promised a sale that wasn't ringing up. She said it was about the principle. I think it was about math and dignity. "Math and dignity," Maya repeated, writing it down like a proverb. "Okay, thanks." After tea, she opened Ruth's old budget page. Pencil ledger lines like fence posts. Groceries, $20. Gas, $6. Church potluck, 1 casserole, 1 story. She imagined writing her own. Groceries, $20. Apps, 18 minutes of privacy. Bus, $2.50 or a soaked hoodie if I decide to walk in the rain. Emotional labor, 1 hour of telling myself I'm doing fine. She flipped the page and made a list titled Invisible Ingredients. Heat. The $20 stretches further if the stove can run for 3 hours on Sunday. Utility bill says that's a choice, not a right. Storage. A freezer is a time machine if you have one. A tiny apartment freezer is a post-it note. Community. Knowing Ezra with the smile and the lanyard saint. Text threads where neighbors say, "I've got extra carrots, who wants some?" The pantry flyer on Maple meant "we" was still a usable word. Skill. Knife sharpness, how to coax beans past bland, the reflex to save bones, the courage to taste and adjust. Mental margin. Space in the head to plan for Wednesday using Sunday's chicken. Inflation taxed that margin first. To test her own numbers, she did a little experiment. 2 dinners, same $20, different ledgers. Dinner A, Ruth's Rules, 1974 Economics. Dried beans soaked overnight,
simmered with onion and a ham hock if a neighbor had one to spare.
Cornbread from cornmeal and buttermilk, made by souring milk with vinegar. Slaw from cabbage, carrots, mayonnaise scraped from a jar that squeaked when you reached the corners. Time, long, slow, deliberate. Money, modest. Fuel, oven heat that also warmed the kitchen. Dinner B, Maya's rules, 2025 economics. Canned beans, rinse like you were apologizing to your blood pressure. Quick skillet cabbage with garlic and vinegar. Cornbread hacked from a box mix on clearance. Time, 30 minutes, because the day had eaten the rest. Money, more than it looked. Fuel, stove on and off. The oven stayed quiet because the electric bill had raised an eyebrow. She plated both realities on her mental table and tasted the difference. Then was a braise that taught patience. Now was a stir-fry that honored haste. Both were delicious if you salt at the right time and add a teaspoon of stubbornness. She packed tomorrow's lunch, pasta with sauce that aspired to Sunday, cabbage tucked in like confetti, and checked her wallet. The remaining coins winked up from the pocket like minnows in shallow water. 81 cents of optimism. Before bed, she taped the pantry flyer hours onto the inside cover of the notebook. Not as a future she was resigned to, but as a future she would neither romanticize nor refuse. She wrote one more line, a recipe for her own head. When the price goes up, add vinegar before salt. When the world gets louder, add beans before beef. When the ledger hurts, add people before pride. She closed the notebook and set it beside the sink. The apartment hummed, the fridge muttering, the street murmuring, the radiator tapping like a distracted drummer. Maya breathed with the room, counted her costs, counted her blessings, and called the sum enough for tonight. Ruth's scissors made a sound like little birds pecking at the Sunday paper, snip, snip, while the AM radio kept time and the kitchen clock cleared its throat every minute. She called it gathering, the way some people gathered eggs or gossip. Coupons fanned across the table like a deck of lucky cards. 12 cents off canned tomatoes, 25 cents off laundry powder, double coupon day underlined with a star that meant wear comfortable shoes. She sorted by aisle in neat stacks, secured with rubber bands rescued from celery. You don't clip everything, she told the kids. You clip what you actually buy. The store hopes you'll get excited and wander. We don't wander, we hunt. On the fridge, a magnet from the plumber pinned the weekly circular, columns of prices like a hymn sheet. The plan wrote itself in pencil margins. Spaghetti this week because tomatoes are on special. Cornbread because cornmeal's been marked down, and beans are friendlier when there's something to scoop them with. On coupon day, Ruth knew everyone at the register. Alma with the lacquered hair would wink and say, "Stack those doubles, didn't you?" And Ruth would grin like a magician. The manager, Mr. Caldwell, ran a strict ship, but he respected a woman who could turn dimes into dinners. When a sale tag didn't match the ring-up, Ruth approached like a diplomat with proof. "Your circular says 59 cents, she'd say, coupon poised.
We honor our word here, don't we? And the price would slide down obediently, nickels freed like prisoners of war. Then versus now, the scissors became thumbs. Instead of snip, snip, Maya's kitchen heard tap, tap, her phone unlocking a constellation of apps that wanted her birthday, her email, her consent to be followed across the internet like a parade balloon. Each app promised a treasure map. Clip digital coupons. Unlock member pricing. Spin the rewards wheel. The maps worked mostly, but the tolls were new. Time. Push notifications. The faint ache of being seen. She sat at the table with the ginger ale pink notebook and a lineup of icons blinking like polite doorbells. Flannery Zap, the big box competitor 2 bus rides away. A cashback app that asked her to photograph receipts like they were rare birds. A coupon aggregator that demanded she watch a 30-second ad for artisanal pet treats she would never buy to save 40 cents on pastas she would.
Unit price is still the truth, she muttered, zooming in on tiny numbers beneath bold claims. She learned the choreography. Clip the egg special, limit 1. Pair it with the loyalty price on milk, must buy 2. Combine the pasta sale with the jarred sauce BOGO. Mix and match, exclusions apply. She screenshotted a barcode, crossed the kitchen, and willed the scanner at self-checkout to accept her offering. Beep. Blessings. In the group chat, her building's little community lifeline, neighbors shared what Ruth and Alma would have traded at the register. Lidl's got 10-pound rice bags for $7.99, wrote Antonio 13B. Digital? In-store only? Priya and 4C asked, already halfway to a plan. In-store, but they'll honor if you show the web page. Ask for Renee. Renee's the coupon boss, Maya typed, grateful for modern folklore. At work, the app kings held court around the microwave. They were not kings of money. No one in her office wore that crown. But kings of the glitch, princes of the stack sale, dukes of, if you split your transaction into 2, you'll trigger both thresholds. One swore that if you bought the smaller jar and the larger jar of the same brand in the same basket, the register misread a code and double applied a discount. Another explained that the membership app at the big box would sometimes issue a $5 credit for an abandoned cart. So he'd start a cart in the app, go make a sandwich, and return to a consolation prize for doing nothing. Maya took notes, amused and a little tired. Hustle had replaced clipping, but the spirit was familiar. Learn the rules, then learn which rules were just strong suggestions. She thought of Ruth, scissors flashing, who had once traded a handful of S&H green stamps to Miss Alvarez for a ham hock, then turned that into 3 meals and a story they told for years. In 2025, the stamps were QR codes. The ham hock was a manager's special sticker, and the story lived in a text thread punctuated by emojis. The barter was still there, just translated. Maya messaged a coworker, "Got extra cabbage, anyone want?" and came home to find a bundle of scallions on her doormat with a thank you note shaped like a smiley face. On a rainy Thursday, she met an actual coupon queen in the wild, a woman at Flannery's with a binder as fat as a wedding album, pages of clear plastic sleeves holding clipped rectangles like baseball cards. The woman conducted the checkout like a symphony, stacking manufacturer coupons on top of the store digital, timing her scans so the system recognized the order. Maya watched, rapt. "You planning a heist?" the woman asked, kind eyes over half-moon readers. "Planning to learn," Maya said. "My grandma clipped, I tap. The savings are real, but the toll is time." The woman nodded, binder zipper purring closed like a satisfied cat. "I coupon because it's my puzzle," she said. 1 hour a week, I turn edges into a picture. When it stops feeling like a picture, I stop. Maya went home and made her own rule. Coupon within joy. Clip the obvious, skip the fussy. If an app nags, unfollow. If a deal requires calculus and 3 identifications, let it sail by. She wrote it in the notebook under Invisible Ingredients and added, "Community beats coupon, 9 times out of 10. A neighbor's extra zucchini is worth more than a 30-cent manufacturer offer if it comes with a recipe and a laugh in the hallway." That weekend, she tried the cashback app for the first time, photographing the receipt with the concentration of a wildlife photographer. The app chirped $1.40 back and shot confetti across the screen. She smiled anyway. $1.40 was bus fare on a good day. She moved it to a little envelope she labeled in Ruth's block letters, "Rainy Day Rice." The name made saving feel like planting. Then versus now looked like this on the page. Then, scissors, circulars, double coupon day, a manager who knew your name and your principles. Now, apps, loyalty numbers, receipt photos, A glitch catalog shared in a group chat, a cashier named Renee who quietly taps in the price you should have gotten. Both columns had the same subheading, dignity, because it turned out the point wasn't shaving pennies for sport, it was deciding that your effort deserved a result and your table deserved to be full. On Sunday night, Maya lined up the week on the counter like a parade. A jar of sauce doctored into magnificence, a 2-day pot of beans that would become tacos and then a soup, hard-boiled eggs cooling in ice water like pearls, cabbage slaw bright with vinegar. She tucked the app deals into the part of her brain that kept bus schedules and birthdays. She slid the notebook back to its spot with a pencil sleeping in the coil. Coupon queens, she whispered, picturing Ruth and Alma and the binder lady. App kings, she added, saluting the microwave court. Different tools, same crown. The person who makes sure the people they love eat well, even when the receipt lies. Outside, the rain stopped. In the streetlight, the asphalt shone like fresh tape on a wrapped present. Inside, the 20s work was stretched, labeled, stacked. The kitchen smelled like vinegar and tomato and a plan. Sunday began with the slow bravado of a roast, the kind that makes a kitchen smell like confidence. Maya salted chicken thighs until they looked gently snowed on, dusted paprika like a secret handshake, and browned them in a skillet that inherited its shine from years of doing the right thing slowly. The sizzle was a hymn. The cabbage from yesterday surrendered in ribbons, glossed in drippings and vinegar until even the shyest leaf tasted like it had something to say.
She plated 2 thighs with cabbage and potatoes. Then, because Ruth was in the room the way sunlight is in a room, she lifted the remaining thighs onto a plate and stared at the skillet. At the bottom, fawned, browned bits like tiny fortunes. She splashed water, stirred, scraped treasure loose with a wooden spoon that had earned its dents. Liquid turned the color of amber and apology. That went into a jar labeled Liquid Gold, with Ruth's block letters and Maya's flourish. Monday would thank Sunday. Bones waited on the cutting board, patient as a good dog. Skin and bits went into a bag she kept in the freezer, the scraps bank, a motley savings of onion ends, carrot nubs, parsley stems, the heel of a tomato that had done its best. She clipped the bag's shirt with a clothespin and felt Ruth nudge her. That's not trash, that's Tuesday. The stock pot came out. Water, the bones. The scraps bank emptied with a soft thud, smells waking like old friends. Peppercorns, a bay leaf that looked like it had drifted out of a book. The stove cocked an eyebrow, and the apartment became a map to someplace better than here. Steam tracing routes up into the corners, the air thick with the kind of hope that tastes like salt. Low and slow, Ruth's note said. Never let it gallop. Make it stroll. Maya set the simmer a hair above shy. She skimmed the foam like gossip you didn't need. Every so often she'd tilt the pot and taste with a spoon that had learned diplomacy. More backbone, less bravado. She added a splash of vinegar, Ruth's quiet trick to convince minerals to come to dinner. The broth turned from clear to storybook. While it puttered, she practiced the ritual of Sunday to Wednesday, a choreography that made a week out of a bird. Sunday night, roast thighs with cabbage and potatoes, a small feast to announce that the week would not get the better of her. Monday, shred leftover meat into a skillet with onions and chili flakes, slide it over toast slicked with mustard, spoon a ladle of liquid gold into everything as if it were a password. Tuesday, the stock, strained and cooled, transformed into soup. Carrots, celery, a handful of rice like scattered coins. If she had beans, they came too, elbowing in with, "We are cheap, but we are mighty." Wednesday, whatever remained turned into gravy and introduced itself to mashed potatoes with theatrical confidence, or into a quick noodle bowl that tasted like resourcefulness and a squeeze of lemon fortune. She ladled the finished stock into jars, letting the fat rise like a little hatch she could lift later for frying. The cooled jars lined the counter like lit candles at a vigil for flavor. Each one was Wednesday insurance, the difference between, I guess we'll eat something, and let's do the good bowls.
Then versus now. The ritual had changed its outfit, but not its bones. Ruth would have used the oven all afternoon and let the heat warm the whole house while a football game yammered in the background and someone's science project dried on the radiator. Maya watched the meter and made peace with a gentle simmer. The radiator did its own jazz without being asked. Ruth stored stock in Tupperware she'd gotten free from a bank opening. Maya used jars from pasta sauce, labels scrubbed off with determination and hot water. Both wrote on masking tape with the same Sharpie script. Date, contents, promise. On Monday at lunch, Maya took a thermos of soup to the park near the bus stop where squirrels conducted their brisk, unserious diplomacy. The broth tasted like the kind of thrift that feels like luck. A man in a suit ate a salad he'd clearly paid too much for. A woman with 2 kids split a sub, one of them stealing the pickles with a grin that knew this was a crime worth committing. Maya swallowed and felt something unclench in her chest. This, she thought, is why bones matter. Not just for nutrients, which are impressive, but for narrative. You tell yourself you are the sort of person who turns leftovers into later. The weak believes you. Tuesday night, as the soup rehearsed its best self, she FaceTimed Aunt Liz for a cameo from the past. "Look at that color," Aunt Liz said, chair scooting, face filling the screen with approval. "Your grandma used to call that cashmere broth because it made everything softer." She also called it Tuesday medicine, Maya said, steam curling like punctuation. Said it cured homework. "Worked better than it did on taxes," Aunt Liz laughed. But yes, bones to broth, Sundays to Wednesdays. That was her spell. Cost her $1, saved her 10. After they hung up, Maya wrote in the notebook, "Spells. Save bones, save weak. Stock turns cheap into charming."
Then, block cheese cheaper than pre-shredded, shred it yourself, keep knuckles away from grater. Now, store-brand pre-shredded sometimes undercuts the block, shrinkflation's weird encore. Anti-caking powder isn't the villain if the budget says hello. She split the difference, half a block for melt and honesty, a handful of bagged shreds for stretch. The roux started thin and nervous, then found itself, silky and sure. She salted like she meant it and added the dry mustard because Ruth swore it woke the cheese up, and poured the golden river over elbows that waited in a casserole dish like a choir. No breadcrumb luxury tonight. She shaved the heel of the bread with a box grater and called the rubble rustic. The oven turned the top into a map of tiny brown islands where the comfort lived. She ate at the counter, the fork making short travel between bowl and grin. Mac and cheese had that way of editing a day. You didn't forget deadlines or bills. You just remembered you had a spoonful of say in the matter. Half went into containers for tomorrow, the other half went toward fixing Thursday. Friday brought chili, and with it the choice that always felt like a referendum, beef or beans only. Ruth's chili could be either, depending on sales, neighbors, and weather. "Season the beans like you'd season your best story," she wrote. "Then nobody asks where the beef went." When Mr. Al the butcher trimmed briskets, he'd save Ruth a paper-wrapped mystery labeled trim, and she'd add it to the pot like a secret handshake. Maya opened the pantry and reached for the navy cans, the pinto bag, the jar of cumin, the chili powder that stained fingertips the color of intention. Meat was not in the budget this week, not if she wanted fruit on Sunday. So she built flavor like scaffolding. Onions sweated till sweet, garlic added late so it wouldn't sulk. Cumin bloomed in hot oil until the whole kitchen smelled like it had a passport.
She used the last ladle of liquid gold and felt the pot square its shoulders. Canned tomatoes went in, a square of dark chocolate from the back of the cupboard. Ruth would have used a spoon of molasses, a splash of vinegar to keep the edges bright. Salt waited till the end, like a finale. She thought about stadium chili and a cardboard cup for $9.50 and smiled into the steam. Comfort, retail price. Comfort, home price. The difference wasn't just money, it was the way the apartment hummed while a pot decided to become delicious. When the simmer turned from bubbling to speaking, she called her dad again. "Chili night?" he said, as if he could smell it through the line. "Bean only," she said, grandma style. "Then you better toast your spices," he said, proud of remembering. "Remember the year we couldn't afford beef till payday and she put in a diced carrot? Said it was for sweetness. I swore I could taste steak anyway." He chuckled. "Placebo meat." They ate together, he with his game and a bowl big enough to float a spoon, she with a smaller bowl and a squeeze of lime over the top, because the lanyard saint had slipped her a stray wedge at Flannery's after the lunch rush. On the notebook page, she wrote, "Comfort tax." Then, time, heat, stirring, leftover strategy, shared table. Now, cheese stickers that bite, tomatoes with heritage pricing, electricity that raises an eyebrow, patience spent after long days. Comfort dividend. Then, next day flavors deepen, lunch boxes smell like cumin, kids ask for seconds of beans. Now, meal prep without sadness, freezer gets 2 extra quarts, neighbor texts, "Save me a all," and leaves cornbread at your door. On Saturday, she stacked containers like a skyline, mac in 2 squares, chili in 3 quarts, one labeled "Spicy for Bravery" and one "Mild for Sunday." She tore a page from the notebook and taped it inside a cabinet door. Comfort shortcuts that don't taste like cheating. Toast spices and oil. Save pasta water and add a splash to sauce for gloss. Dry mustard in mac is secret handshake. Vinegar at the end of chili is cymbal crash. Shred some, sprinkle some. Cheese economy is a duet. Serve with pickled onions. Cheap, fast, dramatic. Then she wrote a memory she didn't want to lose. Grandma's casserole dish had a chip on the corner that looked like Idaho. Every time it came to the table, the room relaxed. The dish Maya used was thrift store blue, no Idaho chip, but the room still did the thing. Shoulders drop, voices soften, the calendar stopped tapping its foot. The price of comfort was higher now. The value hadn't blinked. She packed a quart of chili into a tote, texted 3B, "Spicy batch. Trade for scallions?" Minutes later, a knock. Trade complete. Comfort multiplied. As night fell, she spooned cold mac straight from the container, the kind of sacrilege that only counts as prayer if nobody sees, and grinned. Comfort food wasn't just about nostalgia. It was about leverage. You turned pantry math into morale. You swapped coins for calm. On the notebook's margin, she wrote one more line. "When the day costs extra, serve seconds." The pot clicked as it cooled, a tiny metronome marking the end of a week's hard song. Maya's kitchen was a galley, 2 counters facing off like rival teams, with a narrow truce between them. The fridge door, when open, blocked the front door like a bouncer with opinions. The pantry was not so much a pantry as 3 shelves and a dream, which is to say, perfect for a game of pantry Tetris. She started by emptying everything onto the table, a move Ruth called the reckoning. Cans marched in formation, tomatoes, beans, 1 shy can of peaches from a sale that must have made sense at the time. Bags slouched, rice, pasta, flour in a zip bag that had seen things. Spices rattled like a band tuning up. It looked like a store if the store had honest lighting and a manager named Reality.
Ruth's notebook offered a diagram that looked suspiciously like a football play. Arrows showing a FIFO route. First in, first out. Old in front, new in back. Everyone gets their turn. Maya copied the mantra onto blue painter tape and stuck it to the inside of the cabinet like a friendly traffic sign.
With the pieces in place, she drafted a pantry rotation calendar in the notebook. Sunday, cook bulk, beans or stock, refill rice jar, freeze portions. Monday, pasta or eggs, pull one frozen stock. Wednesday, soup or skillet, check fast lane for gaps. Crumbs from freezer heels with a little jar fat and garlic powder and let them snow over the top. The bowl tasted like organization disguised as comfort. She jotted a few small kitchen laws in the notebook. 1. Vertical is your friend. Hooks, racks, back of door shelves. 2. Clear beats cute. If you can see it, you'll use it. 3. Label like you love future you. Dates, notes, silly jokes allowed. 4. Rotate with ritual. One shelf per week. Wipe, bless, release the stale. 5. Make zero night. Once a week, no shopping. Assemble from what's here. It's a creativity tax you'll enjoy paying. 6. Keep a quirk. One wild card ingredient, anchovies, gochujang, or chipotles, that turns boring into bragging. Then versus now, she wrote 2 last lines. Then, big pantry, long horizon, casserole brigades. Now, small pantry, tight choreography, jar symphony. Both, she realized, depended on the same instrument, attention. Attention turns a crowded shelf into a menu. Attention turns, we don't have anything, into, we have exactly enough. She slid the last jar into its place, turned off the kitchen light, and felt the hum of a space that could carry a week without groaning. Pantry Tetris, level cleared. The dollar store near Maple had a bell that rang with the precise enthusiasm of a door-to-door optimist. Inside, the aisles were tight and the promises big. Everything you need, read one banner. Why pay more, asked another, the question shaped like a smirk.
Maya came for dish soap and left with a basket of maybes. That was the trap and the talent of the place. Shelves stacked with solutions that cost less than a bus fare. Each item a little dare. Are you smart enough to make me work? Ruth had feelings about bargain shops. In her notebook, beneath a doodle of a price tag, she'd written, "A deal is only a deal if the use goes the distance." Then, as if picturing this exact aisle decades ahead, she added, "Count ounces, not slogans." So Maya counted. The dish soap bottle looked hardy, but hit a waistline. The unit price beat the big store, but only barely. Paper towels came in a roll so thin it could have doubled as a telescope. Aluminum foil felt like tinsel. False economy, she wrote in the margin of her brain. Cheap up front, costly by Wednesday. But not everything was theater. The store-brand spaghetti was stubborn and true, the same Durham wheat doing the same honest job. Baking soda was baking soda, whether in a plain box or a glam one, and it cleaned the sink like applause. Salt was salt, and the iodized kind cost less than a sigh. Canned tomatoes, the plain kind with no adjectives, were a win if you brought your own adjectives from the spice cabinet. At the end of aisle 3, she met the great temptation, family-size snack packs and a pyramid of bottled iced tea for $1 each. Price per ounce whispered betrayal. She pictured the 20 as a lifeguard blowing a whistle. Want is loud, need is steady. She backed away, laughing at herself. The bell over the door tinkled as someone else came in to fight their own math. Then versus now, Ruth and Maya played the same game with different pieces. Ruth's false economies had been cheap aluminum pans that buckled at Thanksgiving and off-brand batteries that died during a storm.
She knew to spend real on what would outlast the month: a cast iron skillet, a decent knife, a sturdy broom. Buy once, cry once, she'd told the kids, then handed them rags cut from old t-shirts like coupons for the future. Maya added her modern footnotes. Reusable beats almost free. A roll of paper towels for $1 is a promise to keep buying paper towels. A stack of cotton cloths is a truce with your washer and a handshake with your budget. Spice blends are mood rings. The Italian seasoning costs less here, but it smells tired. Better to buy single jars slowly and mix your own. Still, $1 jar of red pepper flakes? Yes, please. Plastic storage cracks when life gets cold. 2 glass deli quarts, even if they cost a few dollars each elsewhere, beat 6 flimsy containers that warp into modern art. False economy is a cracked lid and spilled soup on a work bag. Batteries, bandages, and hope. Some things must work when you need them. The dollar version gambles with your future self's nerves. She passed. She did allow herself a small cart coup, a pack of clothespins. Not for laundry, her building said no, but for sealing bags, pinning notes,
Clipping the scraps bank in the freezer. A dozen for $1 felt like a real equation. At the register, a woman ahead of her paid in exact coins poured from a hand as steady as a priest's. Behind her, a teenager in a fast food uniform counted the bills for a poster board, glitter, and markers. School project night. When the total stung, Maya reminded herself she wasn't shopping wrong here. You are not failing if you shop where the air smells like plastic and lemon. You're playing a level you didn't design. The trick is to bring your own rule book. Back home, she ran a quick dollar store trial by Tuesday. Use it for 2 days and see if it earns a place on the permanent roster. Dish soap. Needed more per sink. Net cost, tie at best. Verdict, skip next time, bulk buy elsewhere with a neighbor split. Spaghetti. Honest. Al dente like a handshake. Verdict, yes, stock when you pass by. Baking soda. Salt. Reliable. Verdict, yes, stock when you pass by. Foil. Ripped like gossip. Verdict, no. Clothespins. Quiet heroes. Verdict, lifetime appointment. She wrote a sticky note for the notebook. False economy equals future apology. She stuck it above the budget page. Then she added the companion note Ruth would have liked. True economy equals future gratitude. A day later, she carried a bag of the no items to the community board's give and take box with a note, free, works fine, just not for me. Someone else would have a different equation. Maybe the foil would line a craft project, and the dish soap would sit by a basement sink that didn't care about bubbles. Money math is personal. Dignity is shared. That evening, she cooked a dollar store dinner on purpose to prove a point to herself. Store-brand spaghetti, dollar tomatoes coaxed into sauce with onion, garlic, and a teaspoon of sugar, a shower of red pepper flakes from the tiny jar that had decided to be excellent. She set the bowl down, tasted, and smiled. The meal didn't taste like compromise. It tasted like attention.
On the notebook's then versus now page, she added, randomly, then, thrift stores and 5 and dimes. Some things cheap forever, some things cheap only once. Now, dollar aisles and online flash deals. Same test applies. Does it last? Does it do the job? Does it serve the week? Before bed, she taped one more rule inside the cabinet, a pledge to future Maya, standing at a bright aisle with a basket and a heartbeat. Buy cheap, buy twice. Buy right, buy once. Buy smart, buy peace. The kitchen light clicked off. The bell at the dollar store rang in her memory. A tiny, cheerful reminder that even in a maze of bargains, she could choose the exit with her head high. The pantry on Maple was inside a church basement that smelled like lemon cleaner and coffee that had been optimistic since 7 a.m. A hand-painted sign over the steps read, "Take what you need, leave what you can," and someone had added in Sharpie, "No questions, only hellos." Maya arrived with 3 clean jars, a jar of her liquid gold, and a shy bag of rice, half full but respectful. She felt the small ache of crossing the threshold, pride tapping her shoulder, common sense taking her hand. Ruth's notebook had a page for this too, a page that looked like math homework. Algebra of enough. If I have X and you have Y, and X plus Y feeds us both, what is pride for? Show your work. Casserole for the neighbor with the flu. Extra tomatoes become sauce for the youth group spaghetti night. Wednesday stock traded for Friday scallions. Tables were arranged like friendly islands. One had canned goods, another dairy and coolers humming, a third piled with bread in plastic sleeves that whispered when you touched them. A free table near the door held what didn't fit the categories: baby socks, a stack of paperbacks, a jar of mismatched buttons, a waffle iron that still had hope. Volunteers in bright aprons moved like stagehands, placing crates of apples that had grown funny but tasted right. "First time?" asked a woman with kind eyes and a name tag that said Renee. The same Renee who, according to building folklore, was the coupon boss at a different store. Here, she wore authority softer. "Kind of," she said. "First time with jars." "Then you're family," Renee said, and pointed her toward the board with specials written in chalk. Produce that needed homes, dairy near the date. "We keep limits gentle," she added. "If you're feeding more, say so. If you're shy, we'll guess."
The line moved like a river that knew where it was going. A dad balanced a toddler on one hip and a bag of oranges on the other. A retiree with a veteran's cap tucked a loaf of bread into his backpack the way you tuck in a grandchild. A college kid with a calculus textbook took 2 cans of chickpeas and traded a jar of homemade jam labeled Straub/whatev June. Maya placed her stock and rice on the give shelf and took a breath she hadn't noticed she'd been rationing. Then she shopped the take, which felt more like listening than choosing. 2 onions, a carton of muck stamped for Saturday that would happily behave till Monday, a bag of carrots with their green wigs still attached, a dozen tortillas that someone had rescued from the almost bin at the grocery. She added a lemon because Thursday meals forgive everything if you give them zest. At the checkout that wasn't, a folding table with a jar for donations and a bowl of peppermint candies, Renee slid a small card toward her. "Pantry algebra," Renee said, tapping it. The card read, "Give when full, take when thin. Say yes to abundance even if it's crooked. Frozen is a time machine. Use it. Ask for recipes. We're rich in those." "Also," Renee said, conspiratorial, "we got a bakery donation this morning. Take a bag of rolls. They're yesterday's, which is almost today." Maya laughed, took the rolls, and felt the inside of her chest do that loosening again, the one that broth and good news both manage. On a side table, a teen was teaching an older man how to use the market's EBT matching program on Saturdays. Double your dollars for fruit and veg up to a limit. "Tokens," the teen said, hands explaining circles. "You get wooden tokens that feel like pirate money. The farmers love them. You'll feel rich in zucchinis." Maya pocketed the info with the lemon and the rules. Then versus now wrote itself on the interior chalkboard of her head. Then, Ruth's era, church basements with casseroles labeled in cursive, S&H stamps traded for a ham hock, neighbors who knew your business and your favorite pie. Dignity in the casserole dish you brought and the story you told after. Now, Maya's map. Mutual aid spreadsheets, text threads that say, "Anyone need diapers at 11 p.m.?" EBT match at the farmer's market, community fridges humming on corners, volunteers named Renee who bridge coupons and compassion. Dignity in the no question sign and the way everyone says each other's names. On her way out, a volunteer in a sweatshirt that said Team Soup held up a flyer. Neighborhood soup swap. Bring 1 quart, take 1 quart. The rules were delightfully precise. Label allergens, date it, and no shame in canned beans. Someone had illustrated a pot wearing sunglasses. Maya signed up, picturing a parade of quarts, her chili trading places with someone's faux light, her stock swapped for a creamy potato leek with ambitions. Back home, she laid the pantry haul on her small counter and began another round of the algebra of enough. Half the rolls went into the freezer for future sandwiches. Carrot tops became pesto with a handful of walnuts she'd hoarded since a holiday sale.
The tortillas meant tacos tonight. Cabbage slaw bright with lemon, the last shreds of Sunday chicken crisped in a pan until the edges turned bossy. She set aside 2 onions and the lemon for a neighbor who texted, "Got laid off, pantry hours?" and replied with times, directions, and, "I'll leave a bag by your door." The bag wasn't charity, it was choreography. Today you, tomorrow me, both of us all the time. She opened the notebook and created a page titled Community Math. 1 jar stock plus 1 neighbor's scallions equals 3 bowls of soup plus 2 people who feel seen. 2 hours volunteering equals tokens for produce plus recipes learned. 1 pantry visit equals the relief that makes you cook again. X, my excess, plus Y, your need, equals enough. Solve for gratitude. She added a footnote in Ruth's voice because sometimes you have to write your elders into the margin so they stay in the conversation. We are not meant to miracle alone. Before bed, she packed a small box for the give-and-take shelf by her building's mailboxes. 2 jars she'd scrubbed shiny, a bundle of carrot tops tied with string, and a recipe card that said, "Pesto, yes, really." And 3 of the bakery rolls with a post-it, "Great with broth, apt 2F." She felt slightly ridiculous and exactly right. On the way back upstairs, she passed the community board. Someone had added a note under the pantry hours. "Thank you to whoever left the pickled onions. You changed my tacos and my life a little." The handwriting was blocky and sincere. Maya touched the corner of the paper like a benediction. In the kitchen, she wrote 1 more line under Algebra of Enough, because the equation kept expanding. Enough is not a number, it's a neighborhood. She underlined it once, then set the pencil down and let the house be quiet around it. Saturday crackled with that early light farmers swear by, the kind that makes tomatoes look like they've been told a secret. The market set up along the old train spur, white tents like folded sails, chalkboard signs flirting with adjectives, sweet corn, free stone peaches, baby kale, heirloom this and that. A busker tuned a guitar near the honey table, and a toddler in light-up sneakers negotiated hard for a cinnamon roll. Maya came with a canvas tote, an apple core tucked into the side pocket for the compost bin, and her EBT card zipped into the coin pouch where Ruth used to keep S&H stamps. The pantry teen's voice echoed in her head. Tokens feel like pirate money. At the info booth, a volunteer with a sun hat that could shade a sedan smiled. "Are you using EBT today?" she asked. Kind as a porch. Maya nodded. The volunteer swiped her card, offered a receipt, and poured wooden tokens into Maya's hand. 1 color for regular EBT, another for the market's matching program for fruits and vegetables. They did clack like treasure. "Double on produce up to the daily cap," the volunteer said, tapping a sign with a hand-painted carrot. Farmers love these. Then, versus now, unfurled in the back of Maya's mind like 2 banners on the same pole.
Then Ruth. Farm stands out on the highway shoulder, a cigar box for change, corn in paper sacks wet with mourning, cash money only, and the farmer threw in an extra tomato if you talked about the weather like you meant it. Now, Maya. A whole economy under canvas. Tokens, vouchers, QR codes for recipes, a tent where someone taught knife skills with plastic cutting boards and volunteer bravado. Farmers still threw in extras, but now they asked, "You using the match? Let's make sure you get it."
She started with eggs from a table where a teenager recited chicken breeds like baseball stats. Next, cucumbers beaded with cold. A bunch of rainbow carrots that looked like a parade had wandered through soil. And a head of romaine that squeaked when you pressed it. Ruth's test for freshness. At a peach stand, the farmer sliced samples with a pocket knife that had seen miles. The sample tasted like summer had been concentrating all week just for this moment. At the Greens tent, a woman in an apron held court over a portable burner, preaching the gospel of wash well, salt early, acid last. Paper cups of sautéed kale went around like communion. Maya took one, nodded at the lemon finish, and pocketed the free recipe card printed with affordable greens and a doodle of a smiling skillet. The market had a veggie bucks table for families with kids. Taste a new vegetable, earn a little voucher. Maya watched a boy in a superhero t-shirt take his first brave bite of raw kohlrabi, then grin like he'd just learned a magic word. "Crunchy apple potato," he announced, victorious. The volunteer bowed like a maitre d' and handed him the voucher like a knighthood. Prices weren't dreamland. This was still the month where a 20 went thin. But the tokens stretched where it mattered. Maya did what Ruth had taught her. Buy peak and plan around it. She asked the tomato farmer for the sauce box, the seconds with bruises and too much personality. He slid a 10-pound flat across the table for less than the price of 2 pristine heirlooms. They'll go quick, blink, and they're sauce. She planned to blink exactly once. At the mushroom stand, temptation crept in. Oyster mushrooms fanned out like ruffles, lion's mane shaggy and smug. She let herself choose a small paper bag, the kind of splurge that could perfume a whole pan. You sauté these with onions and thyme, and people think you robbed a steakhouse. Maya smiled. Placebo meat, Chapter 2. She met a farmer who remembered her from last month. "Soup lady," he said, handing over a bunch of scallions with too much swing for good bookkeeping. "We traded stock for onions once." It was true. The algebra of enough moved in both directions here. She showed him a photo of her broth jars lined up like votives. He said the broth looked churchy, the highest compliment vegetables ever received. Back at the info tent, she traded a few remaining tokens for a market money voucher good next week, budget smoothing, like laying a plank across a thin spot in the month. The volunteer slid a flyer into her tote, a schedule of cooking demos, a list of which stands took tokens, and a note about a gleaning day, where volunteers could collect unsold produce for the neighborhood pantry. "Sign up, you'll sleep like a good day." Maya walked home in that smug way only a brimming tote can produce. In the kitchen, she staged triage like an ER for produce. The sauce,
Tomatoes went straight into a sink bath. Blemishes got trimmed, the rest quartered into a stock pot with garlic, onion, and a carrot nub to sweeten the pot without sugar. She didn't peel them. Ruth's marginalia, "You have a sieve, let it earn its keep." A low simmer turned the pot into a red chorus. The mushrooms got the hot pan treatment with the scallions and a whisper of soy from the back of the fridge. She saved half for tomorrow's eggs, half for tonight's toast. One slice of market roll toasted hard, spread with the tiniest smear of ricotta, mushrooms piled on like a good mistake, lemon zest over the top because the produce match had paid for a lemon, and joy demands dividends. She washed the carrots, clipped the tops short, and stood them in a jar of water like a bouquet in the fridge, a Ruth trick dressed up for Instagram. Cucumbers became quick pickles in a deli quart, hot water, vinegar, salt, sugar, garlic, peppercorns. Tokens into tang. Then versus now made another note. Then, canning marathons, steam fogging the windows, a church kitchen shared with 3 other women in aprons, laughing like a brass section. Now, small batch sauces and reused jars, freezer stands in for a root cellar, recipe cards printed by a non-profit, demos under tents, kids earning vouchers for brave bites. Same math, abundance now equals flavor later.
By evening, the sauce had slumped into itself. Maya ran it through a food mill, an old one, found at a thrift store with a note in tape, "Works. Turn clockwise, be nice," and watched skins and seeds step politely aside. She tasted, salted, and labeled 2 jars, "Aug sauce, smile," though it wasn't August. It's just how Ruth wrote it. Into the freezer they went, map updated on the door, tiny victory flags. She plated a dinner that tasted like a good decision: mushrooms on toast, a side of quick cukes, and 1 perfect peach, sliced and fanned the way restaurants do when they feel sentimental. She ate standing up, which felt wrong. Then she sat, which felt right. Before bed, she wrote in the notebook, "Market rules on a match. 1. Ask for seconds. Sauce boxes or stories waiting to happen. 2. Spend the match on lemons and greens, the small things that make cheap things sing. 3. Taste before you commit. A sample is a promise test. 4. Freeze in flat bags if jars won't fit. Label like a librarian. 5. Take a recipe card and write your own note on the back after you cook it. Today, mushrooms equals steak without the argument." She added a then versus now footnote. Then, cash and a handshake. Sometimes a farmer slipped you dill. Now, tokens and a screen. Sometimes a farmer slips you dignity. The kitchen smelled like tomato, vinegar, and a plan. The EBT match had doubled fruit and veg, but the real doubling happened in her head. Markets as more than shopping. Markets as a classroom, a choir, a neighborhood under canvas.
She washed the food mill, set it to dry, and listened to the city hush itself. $20 couldn't buy the whole market then or now, but with tokens and timing, it bought a week that tasted like optimism. Maya stood in aisle 7, where loyalty was packaged in primary colors. Labels shouted like campaign posters: creamier, richer, realer. The store brand, lower on the shelf, wore sensible shoes and a price tag that didn't flirt. Her $20 bill had already been promised to eggs, bread, and 1 morally necessary coffee. Now she had to decide if the jar with the familiar childhood font deserved its throne. Ruth had an entire page in the notebook titled, "Can You Taste It?" A grid with check marks and notes like a science fair, but with sass. Canned tomatoes? Store brand is fine. Add thyme and onion. Peanut butter. Name brand went on sale, otherwise stir the store brand and add a whisper of honey. Oats? Same field, different box. Buy the bag. Pasta? If it's 100% durum semolina, your sauce won't know your secrets. Cheddar. Block greater than bag unless the bag goes on sale and your knuckles want mercy. Maya updated the grid with 2025 footnotes. Shrinkflation meant some store brands were quietly heroic, while some once trusty labels had started wearing slimmer suits. So she staged a blind taste test in her kitchen like a nerd with a mission. The experiment. Brand versus generic, a $20 trial. 1. Peanut butter toast test. 2 slices of the same bread, toasted to golden brown like optimism. 1 spread with name brand creamy, 1 with store brand natural. She marked the plates with a secret dot of mustard underneath. Ruth would have approved of the theater. Verdict? The name brand was sweeter and smoother. The store brand had peanut swagger, but needed a pinch of salt and a teaspoon of honey to charm. Conclusion: buy store brand, keep a tiny honey jar labeled PB Fix. 2. Tomato sauce showdown. 2 pots, equal parts store brand crushed tomatoes and name brand crushed tomatoes. She doctored both with onion, garlic, liquid gold, and a patient simmer. Blind taste, the difference shrank like a sweater in a hot wash. Conclusion: sauce erases pedigree if you give it time and salt. 3. Mac and cheese meltdown. Half block of store brand cheddar, versus half block of brand name, both graded by a box grader that had opinions. In the bechamel, the pricier cheese melted faster, but the final bake was a photo finish. Breadcrumbless top, corners slightly browned, both bows disappearing the same way. Conclusion: spend only if the sale sign waves. Otherwise, cheese is cheese, mustard is magic. Oats, morning peace test. Store brand old-fashioned versus the oats with a rugged outdoorsman on the label. Cook with water and a pinch of salt. Both asked for the same cinnamon, the same splash of milk. Maya couldn't tell them apart with her eyes closed, which she tried, because coffee had all four not been cooperative. Conclusion: bag it from the bottom shelf. Future you can afford extra cinnamon. 5. Pasta al dente trial. Store brand penne versus import with gold filigree and a serious barcode. Boiled side by side, sauced identically. The fancier one held a tiny bit more bite and hugged sauce like it had feelings. The store brand held its own on a Tuesday. Conclusion: splurge only when pasta is the event, not the vehicle. Tuesday doesn't care. Saturday might. 6. Salt and vinegar chips. Morale research. Name brand Tang versus store brand's Polite Sour. The name brand slapped. The generic shrugged. Conclusion: morale is sometimes a line item. Buy the slap when life demands a win that crunches. Then versus now unfolded on the page like a friendly debate. Earth. Label loyalty is a hobby for rich people. She bought what tasted right blindfolded because she trusted a pot more than a slogan. Brand mattered in exactly 3 places. Coffee, her one indulgence, always from the can with a logo that smelled like every morning of her life. Tuna, packed in water, not mystery. And soap, the bar that didn't make the kids itch. Everything else was, teach it to be delicious. Maya, apps and unit prices made the aisle a chessboard. Some store brands were made in the same factories as the fancy labels. Some fancy labels leaned on nostalgia while quietly turning the screw on ounces. The game was to know when the story in your head matched the flavor in your mouth. To keep herself honest, she drew a brands worth the badge column and a generics with swagger column on a page titled Taste versus Tales. Brand worth the badge, when on sale or for splurge. Salt and vinegar chips for morale emergencies. One favorite hot sauce because personality. Coffee if the bulk bin's been moody. Yogurt when the live cultures taste like vacation. Generics with swagger. Default heroes. Canned tomatoes, oats, rice, dried beans, flour and sugar, pasta, weeknight edition, vinegar, salt, baking soda, the kitchen's quiet democracy. She added a middle column, swing votes, peanut butter, cheese, cereal, things where brand memory tried to rent space in your brain. For those, she wrote a rule in block letters. If nostalgia costs more than flavor, pay with a playlist instead. She made a Saturday pancakes playlist and grinned at her own loophole. Later, she invited the building chat to a blind bite night in the laundry room. Paper plates labeled secretly, a lineup of store versus brand crackers, peanut butter and tomato sauce on toast triangles. 10 people showed, more curious than judgy. Laughter did the stirring. Results surprised them. The majority picked store-brand sauce in the doctored test, name-brand peanut butter by a nose, and declared both crackers as just crackers.
Enough. Someone brought sparkling water, name brand versus private label, and the private label won because the bubbles were bossier. It's not the brands are bad, Priya said, wiping sauce from her wrist with the gravity of a judge. It's that stories are tasty, and companies know it. They do, Maya said, adding a new page to the notebook titled Brand Stories I Buy on Purpose. the hot sauce that shouted like a brass band, the coffee that tasted like a parent's kitchen on snow days, the chips that were a good day in a bag. She put a cap on the list, 3 items, so treats felt like treats instead of a slow leak. Before bed, she wrote a simple kitchen oath. Trust your tongue over the label. Train your tongue with time, salt, acid, and curiosity. She taped it to the inside of the cabinet door where the spices lived and added Ruth's addendum in sharp pencil. If you can't taste the difference, bank the difference. She poured the last of the store brand oats into the jar, wrote oats, same field, on a piece of tape, and smiled. The kitchen didn't care about marketing. It cared about coaxing and heat and the patience to let a sauce tell you when it was ready. And $20? 20 cared about math and moxie. Brand or generic, the rule was the same. Make it sing, make it stretch, make it yours. Payday hit like a lighthouse. Steady, bright, and a little far away until you're suddenly right under it. Maya's phone buzzed at 12:03 a.m., the deposit slipping into her account with all the ceremony of a whisper. She let herself sleep on it. Ruth's rule: never spend money at midnight. Dream on it. Decide at coffee. Morning brought coffee honest enough to grade papers, and a legal pad divided into 4 boxes with a ruler's stern spine. Ruth had called it the envelope method. In her day it was literal. 4 envelopes in a bread tin, dated, and fat with cash on Friday night. Slimmer, but triumphant by Thursday. Maya lived in a tap and chip world, but she liked paper and the click of a binder clip that said, "We're serious." She titled the boxes in block letters. 1. Keep the lights on. Rent, utilities, transit. 2. The Big Hunger. Groceries, household basics. 3. Future headaches. Sinking funds, shoes, co-pays, the dental probably soon. 4. Joy and morale. Treats, birthdays, busker dollars, the occasional slap-you-back chips. She put a cap on the list, 3 items, so treats felt like treats instead of a slow leak. Then she sharpened her pencil and wrote the month's math like a story with chapters and villains. Bi-weekly paychecks. Rent on the 1st, the month with 5 Mondays that always felt like an obstacle course. Prices that moved like cats. Her EBT allotment posted on a rhythm of its own. She penciled it into the Big Hunger like a choir joining the melody. Then versus now was a battleground and a bridge. Ruth's envelopes were cash-lined. Groceries, gas, kids, misc, don't raid. She'd lay the 20 on the table, count out paper and coins, and pour the coins into a jar labeled Ice Cream Dreams, a sweet budget bleeding. When the
Envelope was empty. The week got creative or quiet. The line was firm and kind. Maya adapted with a wallet that held 4 colored index cards and 4 crisp 20s for the month's $20 project, Cash Anchors in a Digital Sea. She tallied on each card with tiny boxes to fill like a teenager's planner, grocery trips, pantry drops, farmer's market tokens, anything that moved the Big Hunger needle. The card for joy and morale got a gold star sticker because self-respect is a ledger item. She split her grocery plan into 4 mini feasts, 1 for each week, each designed to cascade. Week 1. Build the base. Bulk starches, onions, oil, dried beans, eggs, the scaffolding. Week 2. Flavor and fresh. Garlic, lemons, greens, a manager's special meat to turn into broth and bravado. Week 3. Refill and repair. Rice top-off, coffee if the jar cried, and pantry Tetris check. Week 4. Bridge and boost. Sauce tomatoes, sauce box seconds, frozen vegetables, and 1 morale item that bends the week toward joy. She grabbed her tote and did something Ruth would have called front-loading the month. Flannery's first, oil on sale, limit 1, 2 5-pound bags of rice split with Priya via Venmo and a handshake. the big tub of oats that made mornings feel infinite, a sack of onions like a string of lanterns. Her wallet was lighter, her month felt heavier in the right way. Back home, the 4-envelope feast began. Menus written to the envelopes, not the other way around. Envelope 1. Keep the lights on. She set the kettle on to honor the utilities she was about to pay and clicked through bills with the solemnity of a choir. Ruth used to send checks in envelopes that smelled like the kitchen. Maya's payments smelled like electrons. She scribbled "paid" on the card and drew a tiny light bulb with rays because theater matters. Envelope 2. The Big Hunger. She portioned her staples into jars labeled like battalions. Rice, week 1/2. Rice, week 3/4. So early abundance didn't pretend to be infinite. Flour got a sticky note that read, pancakes twice, bread once, biscuits if morale droops. Beans soaked in 2 bowls with tape flags. Pinto sat chili. Navy, 2's soup. Stock bones weighted like a savings account with personality. Envelope 3. Future headaches. She slid cash into a zipper pouch and wrote dental in ink you couldn't erase. Ruth's version had been break job, summer camp, Christmas. Maya listed copay, shoes, renew bus pass, and a bold replacement pan because the non-stick was finally telling the truth. It felt decadent and responsible at the same time, like flossing while dancing. Envelope 4. Joy and morale. On the card, 1 concert on the green, free tickets, tip the band, 1 bag of slap-you-back chips, 1 bakery pastry when the farmer's market peaches run out, 2 busker dollars, and 1 fancy lemon for a Tuesday. She underlined fancy lemon twice.
By afternoon, the stove was a spreadsheet in steam. Pinto beans loped into chili. Navy beans promised soup. Onions caramelized slow to become the crown of Thursday, the secret of Tuesday, the surprise in Saturday eggs. She wrote, "Carameled onions, moral inventory," on painter's tape and stuck it to the container because naming things makes them last. When the month hiccuped, because months do, she adjusted. A co-worker's birthday meant cupcakes. Joy and morale bought cake mix and a tub of frosting so the office could pretend the day tasted better. A cold snap nudged the utility bill. Keep the lights on took the hit while future headaches sighed and slid over a $5. A grocery app typo offered a one-time $5 oops credit. The Big Hunger caught it like a bouquet. She also set up a tiny ritual Ruth would have adored, the gratitude sweep. On the night of each payday, she swept the digital crumbs, odd dollars, coins, into a savings sub-account named Stockpot. When Stockpot reached $25, she let herself buy a long horizon luxury that would lower future months' costs. A bulk jug of vinegar, a proper sheet pan that wouldn't warp, a mesh strainer that didn't pretend. The sweep made saving feel like cleaning the counter, small, satisfying, inevitable. Then versus now, she noticed the intangibles. Then, payday steak every 3rd month if the tires behaved. Envelopes lined with pencil eraser marks and little valentines to herself. You did it, kid. Summer envelopes swelled with garden overflow. Winter envelopes smelled like cinnamon and compromise. Now, payday ramen upgraded with the good egg and scallions. Index cards annotated with emojis because apparently emotions like budgets. Summer tokens doubled at the market. Winter apps tried to upsell her hot cocoa. The calendar was louder, but the boxes still worked. At the end of the first 4-envelope month, Maya flipped to a fresh page and wrote post-game notes like a coach decanting wisdom. Wins. Pantry base front-loaded. Fewer desperate Tuesdays. EBT match. Lemons and greens sang back up all month. Chili stretched into 3 lives without mutiny. Adjustments. Buy cheese once per month.
Shred and freeze in bagged handfuls. Split oil and rice with neighbors quarterly. Move $10 from joy to future headaches on 5-week months. Morale can share the pastry. Rule upgrade. When an envelope runs dry, swap creativity before cash. There's a soup for that. She taped the index cards to the inside of the cabinet door behind the spices, the private bulletin board of a household that knew what it was about. Then she penciled the title for the next chapter of her month, a header she'd keep until it became habit. Feast equals food plus plan plus people. Down the hall, a neighbor's kid practiced trumpet, every note a question mark, learning to be a sentence. The apartment smelled like cumin and coffee and pencil graphite. Payday had been tamed into portions and promises. The 4 envelopes lay stacked in the bread tin, looking smug and righteous. Maya felt it too.
She washed the pot, pressed a palm to the warm lid, and thanked the math for playing nice. The lighthouse was still out there, blinking. She charted the next 2 weeks toward it. Monday's chili stared at Maya from the fridge like a loyal dog, ready, eager, slightly too much. Leftovers were security, rent paid in Tupperware, but she refused to let dinner feel like a rerun with worse lighting. Ruth's notebook had a page titled Second Showings, with arrows looping like a roller coaster. The thesis? Cook once, then remix. She pulled the chili, the last shy square of mac, a jar of liquid gold, half a cabbage, the scallions from 3B, and 2 weary tortillas. The counter looked like a garage band. Time to form a supergroup. Remix number 1. Chili shakshuka, Tuesday brunch for dinner. Skillet hot, a splash of broth to wake the chili. 2 wells carved with a spoon. Eggs slid in like divers. Lid on till the whites just set and the yolks still remembered their purpose. Scallions over the top, a squeeze of lemon, joy and morale line item. Bread healed, toasted hard. It ate like a diner meal that believed in you. Remix number 2. Mac and cheese arancini-ish. Wednesday snack that became dinner. Cold mac scooped into balls, rolled in a quick breadcrumb of toasted freezer heels, pan-fried in a slick of saved fat until the crust clicked under the spatula. Dipped in doctored jarred sauce, they went from leftover to party. She wrote in the notebook, Mac balls equal morale buttons. Remix number 3. Cabbage and chili tacos, Thursday street food fantasy. Cabbage sliced thin, tossed with vinegar and salt, Ruth's wake-up call. Chili crisped in a hot pan till edges got proud. Tortillas warmed directly on the burner, flipped with fingers because tongs were for days with guests. Stack, tortilla, chili, slaw, quick pickled onions from the pantry Tetra store, a dollop of yogurt pretending to be crema. The first bite tasted like a weekend pretending to be a weeknight. Remix number 4. Broth risotto, cozy. Leftover rice met warm liquid gold a ladle at a time, stirred and stirred until the starch said yes. A handful of peas from the freezer, bridge and boost week. A spoon of caramelized onions, morale inventory. Parmesan-like shavings from the end of a block. The pot sighed into creamy. She ate with a spoon and felt invincible in socks. Then versus now, the alchemy had the same elements, heat, acid, salt, and texture, but the stage dressing changed. Then, Ruth, leftovers were renamed with ceremony, hash, casserole, croquettes. Sunday roast became Tuesday pot pie under a pastry quilt. Wednesday beans became Friday refritos, crisped in lard and crowned with a fried egg that almost forgave report cards. The oven did a lot of heavy lifting. Time was part of the spice blend. Now, Maya, the stovetop, handled the quick change. Air fryer if someone had gifted one. Sheet panned if the oven's meter didn't mind. New names still mattered. Skillet pie, crispy rice, bowls. Instagram could keep its perfection. Hers was about speed and swagger. Same soul, Texture is redemption. Make it crunchy, make it creamy, make it saucy. Never make it apologetic.
She made herself a remix matrix on a sticky note stuck to the fridge like a cheat code. Base, heat, texture, bright, crown. Beans or chili, skillet, crisp edges, lime or vinegar, scallions, egg or cheese. Rice or grains, hot broth, creamy stir, lemon zest, toasted crumbs or nuts. Roast chicken, shred and sear, lacy bits, pickle juice splash, quick slaw. Pasta, pan fry in oil, crunchy bottoms, chili flakes, ricotta dollops. Veg medleys, sheet pan reheat, caramelized, vinaigrette, herby yogurt. She added a rule Ruth would applaud. Introduce a new texture or a new temperature. Hot stew on cold greens, cold noodles with hot mushrooms. Crisp something and sprinkle it with something soft. Leftovers fail when everything is the same again. To keep boredom at bay, she kept a remix shelf of personality condiments. A jar of pickled onions, chili crisp from the international aisle, capers, on sale once, lasting forever, a squeeze bottle of DIY fancy sauce, ketchup, mayo, mustard, paprika. For $1 or $2 spread across months, they turned reruns into remixes. Halfway through the week, the building chat chimed. Priya, 4C. Got leftover roasted carrots? Ideas? Antonio, 3B. Blend with broth equals carrot soup. Add yogurt swirl, boom. Maya, 2F. Or mash with chickpeas plus cumin into patties. Crisp on skillet, lemon squeeze. Renee, question mark. Toss with pasta plus butter plus poppy seeds. Trust. They were becoming a collective leftover brain. The algebra of enough had found a new variable, shared riffs. On Saturday, she hosted Leftover Lab, a tiny potluck with one rule: bring something almost but not quite exciting. Priya arrived with roast carrots, Antonio with the end of a rotisserie chicken, the kid from 1A with a tub of plain rice and surprising enthusiasm. They set a stopwatch for 20 minutes, opened cupboards, and played. Rotisserie chicken, shredded, tossed with hot sauce plus butter, slid into tortillas with slaw. Buffalo tacos. Plain rice, pressed into a skillet with oil, crisped into a tadig adjacent disc, respectfully adjacent, topped with yogurt and herbs. Roast carrots, blitzed with broth plus ginger plus a spoon of peanut butter, sauté-style soup with lime. No one apologized for anything. The table applauded like audiences do when a trick works and even when it doesn't. Then versus now, she wrote 2 more truths. First, leftovers kept the lights on quietly. The word frugal wore its good pearls and didn't brag. Now, remixes are flex. Resourceful is a compliment you give each other in group chats and on stairwells. Before bed, she wrote the week's quiet thesis across a clean notebook page. Leftovers aren't what's left. They're what's next. She underlined next so hard the paper pressed a ghost line onto the page below. Tomorrow, the fridge light would click on, and instead of seeing again, she'd see opportunity. That small shift tasted like confidence. The receipt was a skinny scroll, numbers marching like tiny soldiers under fluorescent light. It said $19.62 this time, which sounded like a victory if you ignored the part where last year the same basket had rung up like a friendly handshake and now felt like a negotiation with a moody landlord. Maya flattened the paper next to Ruth's notebook and listened for what it wasn't saying. Receipts don't record the pause, the one you take with your hand on a jar of peanut butter, deciding whether you're a crunchy person this month or a budget person. They don't show the trade you made when you put back the fancy salsa, because coffee had edged up 13 cents, and coffee was your non-negotiable sanity clause.
They don't show the kindness at self-checkout when Lanyard Saint tapped a code like a stage magician and knocked $1 off eggs because system forgot the sign. Receipts also don't show the math of mood. How a good $2.49 bag of carrots can feel like a raise when you're planning a soup. How $4.99 for grapes can feel like someone is charging a fee for joy. They can't print the way the apartment smells when onions meet oil, or how picking up your bowl and drinking the last warm mouthful of broth can feel like you remembered an old song. On the page titled Then versus Now, Maya wrote a question that looked like a dare. What did $1 used to do? Ruth's notes answered in pencil. $1 was school milk money, a gallon of gas sometimes, 2 bus fares, a movie matinee if you found a sticky floor and didn't mind it. In the margins, an old grocery list with prices. Bread, 39 cents. Eggs, 79 cents. Coffee, $2.19, on sale. A different physics. Now, $1 bought a lemon, if you caught the right bin at the right hour. It bought a handful of bulk oats, a scoop of dignity at the farmer's market with tokens, a busker's song outside Flannery's. Sometimes it bought nothing, sales tax eating pennies like popcorn. Inflation lived in the spaces between labels. Shrinkflation was the cousin who showed up uninvited. Cereal boxes with the same loud smile and fewer ounces, yogurt cups that lost an inch and called it wellness. Skimflation snuck in too, thinner napkins, cheaper can openers, customer service on an eternal coffee break. The receipt had the gall to sit there and behave like math. Maya drew a small inflation lexicon for her own sanity. Sticker shock, the gasp in produce. Shrinkflation, when packaging gets Pilates. Skimflation, when quality says, I'm tired. Drift, when club price becomes Club U. Mercy, when a cashier named Ezra or Renee quietly makes it right. She poured coffee and called Dad. Do you remember what bread cost? She asked, like a historian with a spoon.
Depends which year and how much the bakery liked you, he said. I remember your grandma getting mad when it went over 50 cents, without warning. She used to say, if it rises faster than the dough, call your congressperson. Did she? Probably. She also called Mr. Caldwell and the radio station. She believed in yelling politely. They laughed, and Maya pictured Ruth with the phone on her shoulder, notes in front of her like a legal brief, arguing for a universe where the price and the value were neighbors, not exes who avoided eye contact at the block party. That night, Maya set 2 bowls on the table, hers and one for the ghost of then. Into hers, she ladled a bean and green stew, lemon finish, a slick of chili oil that had survived 3 months because a teaspoon can be a religion. Into the ghost bowl, she placed a memory, Ruth's pot roast on a Sunday, carrots collapsing into manners, mashed potatoes piled like a slope you'd sled down. Costs had changed. Flavor had not sworn off showing up. She thought about the hidden taxes again, the privacy toll of apps, the time toll of comparing unit prices with squinted eyes, the emotional toll of a week where every headline reached into your wallet like it had the right. Then she listed the hidden subsidies that didn't print either. The pan you seasoned with 100 meals until it cooked like it loved you. The neighbor who traded scallions for soup. The pantry that turned not enough into we've got you. On a clean page, she wrote, the receipt I wish I got, and under it, minus $1, courtesy of Renee's wink, minus $0.75 because you cooked the beans yourself, minus $2.50, token match for greens and lemons, joy multiplier, minus infinite dollars, value of a recipe you can make on autopilot when the day eats you. Plus $0, the smell of garlic in hot oil, free with every life worth keeping. She taped the actual receipt underneath her pretend one and labeled the pair Truth and Truthier. Inflation made people talk to themselves in aisle 7. It also made them talk to each other. In the group chat, Antonio, 3B.
Heads up, chicken thighs cheaper by the family pack at Hanover. Who wants to split? Priya, 4C. Me, and I have freezer room this week. I'll portion, you Venmo. Maya, 2F. I'll make stock and trade jars. We'll beat the unit price at its own game. That was the quiet rebellion. Respond to a bigger price with a bigger we. On Sunday, Maya used the 4-envelope plan to host a small slice feast for her floor. A loaf of bread she'd coaxed from flour and patience, a pot of beans that tasted expensive because they'd been introduced to garlic at exactly the right second, and a salad of torn romaine with lemon dressing. Joy and Morale's promised fancy lemon doing Morale's work. And a crumble made from the bruised apples she'd rescued and a handful of oats.
On the table, she put place cards made from torn cardboard. Enough. Together. It wasn't a protest. It was a thesis. Someone asked what her receipt had said. She held up the little white strip, then pointed to the table. It doesn't say this, she said, waving at the steam, the clink of bowls, the way conversation lifts like bread in a warm room. It never can. They ate seconds without apology. They traded cleanup duties like baseball cards. Someone washed the good skillet with reverence. Someone else packed leftovers in deli quarts with labels like beans, Monday, crumble, hurry. When the apartment quieted, Maya wrote 3 small policies for herself, kitchen inflation rules, and pinned them to the cabinet where the spices lived. 1. Defend flavor, not brands. Spend where taste actually shows up. 2. Pay in foresight. Shop the sale, batch the beans, freeze the win. Time now beats money later. 3. Tax the rich in your pantry. Use the fancy hot sauce, the last anchovy, the good lemon. Keeping treasures forever is how they turn into regrets. She added Ruth's penciled addendum at the bottom like a signature. When the price goes up, increase the seasoning. Not just in soup, but in life. More care, more humor, more chairs around the table. Inflation had a way of making you smaller if you let it. The trick, Maya decided, was to get tighter without getting tinier. To pull community closer, recipes closer, purpose closer, even as the numbers tried to stretch you thin. The receipt would never tell that story. The notebook would. The meals would. The way her neighbors waved would. She slid the receipt into a plastic sleeve at the back of the notebook, archive of a year where everything cost just a little more and everyone tried just a little harder. On the next page, she wrote the title for what came next, a promise disguised as a plan. The $20 dinner party, hospitality on a budget. The kettle clicked. The street softened. The notebook settled like a loaf cooling on a rack. Numbers are loud. Dinner is louder. Maya decided to throw a dinner party the way sailors decide to race the tide, because it was moving anyway. The calendar had been chewing through her friends. Everyone looked a little threadbare and a lot in need of a table that didn't ask them to explain themselves. She wrote $20 dinner party at the top of a page and drew a circle around it like a halo she intended to earn. Ruth's notebook had a page titled Company on a Shoestring with margins that looked like confetti. The thesis was simple and insistent. Hospitality isn't priced, it's practiced. Under that, a menu that read like music. Big pot, stew, soup, or chili, the kind that makes its own welcome. Bread, something to tear. Butter if the week is generous, oil if it's wise. Salad, with a dressing that wakes up tired hearts. Sweets, fruit baked until it remembers it's summer somewhere.
3. Salad, 5:10 p.m. Priya's greens landed like confetti. Maya added shaved carrots, vegetable ribbons with a peeler, because mandolines demand health insurance, cucumber coins, and a quick pickled red onion cameo. The dressing, lime, cumin, honey, salt, stood by in a jar to be shaken like a maraca right before serving. 4. Dessert, 5:20 p.m. She chopped apples and tossed them with sugar, a spoon of flour, and cinnamon, topped with an oat crumble, oats plus a knob of butter plus sugar plus a pinch of salt, and slid it onto the rack below the soda bread so the oven could multitask like a parent at bedtime. Drinks, anytime. Into a pitcher, water, lemon wheels, parsley stems, don't laugh, and a few cucumber ends. It tasted like a spa had a budget. A second pitcher held front window sun teas started at lunch because she liked the ritual. 2 tea bags in a clear jar, sunshine doing something small and generous. Honey drifted in at dusk. At 5:55, she dimmed the big light and turned on the lamps. A strand of fairy lights tucked into a glass bowl became a centerpiece that cost nothing and looked like intention. She put the playlist on, Ruth-era Sam Cooke sliding into modern brass bands, and a little Dolly, because Dolly fixes a room. Guests arrived with the weather in their cheeks, shoes piled by the mat. The kid from 1A dumped ice into a bowl like confetti. The apartment gained 2 sizes, the way rooms do when conversation starts bouncing. "Smells like a holiday," Antonio said, peering into the pot. "Smells like a hug," Priya said, picking a crumb from the soda bread with admirable self-control. They ate soup that tasted like it had been planning this all week, bowls topped with everyone's something: cheese, scallions, hot sauce, a crumble of stale tortilla chips that added a joyfully trashy crunch. The soda bread tore into quarters with a sound like winter giving up. The salad cut through the richness with lime and virtue. The apple crumble came out bubbling, and they burned their tongues a little and agreed it was worth it.
Maya watched her 20 transform into an evening. Hospitality had a geometry, a big round pot at the center, bread to break, greens to brighten, a sweet to bless, and chairs, borrowed from the hall, pulled in until elbows bumped in a way that felt like permission. Someone started a game, high, low, gratitude. Say one good thing, one hard thing, and one person or place you're thankful for today. It oiled the hinges of conversation. "Hi, I got a compliment from my boss with witnesses," Priya said. Low, rent renewal came with a number that needs counseling. Gratitude, this soup. "Hi, free scallions from a farmer who calls me soup lady," Maya said. Low, the price of coffee keeps creeping. Gratitude, a grandma who taught me to throw a party with a pot. Renee arrived at 6:30 with a bag of rolls and a smile that looked like she'd stacked kindness all day, and still had some. "Bakery's loss, our gain," she said, toasting them on a pan until the kitchen smelt like a bakery rehearsing. She told a story about a coupon glitch that had saved a stranger $10, and how the stranger cried and how she cried, and how sometimes the difference between despair and dinner is the person at the register. The kid from 1A told 3 jokes in a row, all terrible in the way that makes adults laugh because being terrible is the point. The room developed its own weather. Then versus now sat down with them. Ruth's company meals were potlucks where casseroles wore foil hats, and people wrote their names on masking tape like they were clocking into joy. There was coffee and a percolator and a punch bowl that attended every major life event like a nosy aunt. Napkins were paper when they could be, cloth when they couldn't afford paper. Funny how that works. Invitations were phone trees and door knocks. Maya's company meal was a group chat and a communal spreadsheet that lived in everyone's thumbs. Drinks were pitchers of things that didn't tax anyone's budget. The punch bowl was retired, the fairy lights had the job. But the spine was the same. 1 pot plus shared toppings plus bread plus something sweet plus people. The rest was garnish. Around 8, the pot was scraped brave, breadcrumbs confettied the table, and the apple pan had been mined until only syrup and memories remained. Dishes got done by committee, 1 soaper, 2 rinsers, air-dry orchestra. Someone tucked leftovers into deli quarts labeled with a Sharpie. Soup, Priya. Crumble, Antonio. Luca says share. Salad, tomorrow. Maya packed a jar for Renee, who tucked it into her tote like medicine. When the door closed behind the last guest, the apartment felt warm and tall. The 20 had done acrobatics, fed 8, made seconds, created leftovers, and engineered a memory that hung in the air like steam long after the pot cooled.
Maya wrote her $20 dinner party blueprint in the notebook for future use. Build a base: soup, stew, chili, beans, tomatoes, stock, and starch.
Bread without drama, soda bread or toasted yesterdays. Greens with attitude, acid first dressing, let guests toss. Toppings bar, invite contributions, a little cheese goes farther when it's shared. Cheap sweet, fruit plus heat plus oat rubble, ice cream if joy and morale is flush. Ambiance, lamps greater than overhead, playlist greater than silence, fairy lights greater than florals. Game, high-low gratitude, no one loses. Send people home with something, leftovers, a recipe card, a jar. Hospitality echoes. At the bottom, she added Ruth's final word, copied from that confetti page. A party is a promise that life is still worth seasoning. Maya turned off the last lamp. The fairy lights kept humming like a held note. The sink was empty, the room was full. She set the next chapter title on a clean page, the way you set a table before you need it. Work lunches without sad desks. The break room at Maya's office was a democracy of microwaves and whispered resignations. 2 humming boxes, a fridge with a magnetic poetry kit that had devolved into Please Label and Who Stole My Fork, and a coffee machine that dispensed hope on weekdays and brown water on Fridays. The counter smelled like popcorn at 11:57 and scorched marinara at 12:13. Sad desk lunches were a national pastime, but Maya had a better game: lunch insurance. Not meal prep that took a Sunday hostage, but a 2-song ritual that turned leftovers into future confidence. Sunday night, she staged an assembly line of tomorrow across her tiny counter. 2 deli quarts of pour and heat soup, beans plus liquid gold, plus a handful of greens, 2 grain jars, rice on the bottom, cabbage ribboned in the middle, and mushrooms from the farmer's market on top. 1 desk nacho kit, a baggie of toasted freezer heel crumbs seasoned like tortilla dust, a little jar of chili, and a micro-container of pickled onions. You build it at noon like a child who filed taxes. A fruit rotation, bruised apples cut into slices and dunked in lemon water, parceled into wax bags like care packages for future Maya in a meeting. And a tiny joy each day, 1 square of chocolate wrapped in foil and labeled with a Sharpie. Mun, 2, Wen, Thur. Friday got 2 because Friday. She kept a desk drawer pantry the way Ruth kept a flour bin, quietly essential. Salt, pepper, red pepper flakes in old film canisters she'd thrifted, labeled like treasure. A lemon-shaped squeeze bottle of shelf-stable juice for emergency brightness, a travel-sized olive oil.
A spoon-fork hybrid she delighted in calling a spork, like an 8-year-old with a PhD in lunch. A tea bag, a napkin that had seen things but still had opinions. Then versus now, lunch politics had changed wardrobes. Ruth packed metal lunch boxes with a thermos whose lid doubled as a cup. Sandwich wrapped in wax paper, apple whole because browning was a mood killer. She wrote notes on napkins. You were brave. Eat your carrots anyway. The factory whistle was the bell. The percolator in the break room was a parliament. Maya's reality was a swipe badge, a Slack ping chorus, and a microwave cue that measured out a day in 30-second intervals. The note was a text from a friend. Drink water or else. And the percolator had become a pod machine that charged rent per cup. But the principle held. Lunch is not an apology. It's a pause with seasoning. On Monday, an 11:58 calendar alert popped up. Eat, not optional. She stood at the microwave with her pour-and-heat soup, steam fogging her glasses like encouragement. The line was a study in America. A salad eater unsnapped a container that looked like a terrarium. A frozen meal beeped in binary about patience. A guy from accounting stirred instant noodles with the seriousness of a surgeon. Someone reheated fish and ushered in a constitutional crisis.
Maya stepped aside, let two people go ahead, and avoided the fish discourse. Back at her desk, she poured soup into a bowl, added the pickled onions from her drawer, and shook red pepper flakes like confetti. Her screen still glowed with email, but the soup moved the day toward human. On Tuesday, the grain jar made its debut. Rice warmed, mushrooms slid into a hot pan for 90 seconds on the communal stove that shouldn't exist but did. Someone's project had funded it. The building superintendent looked the other way. A squeeze of lemon, a swirl of oil, scallions from Antonio. She dumped the jar into a bowl and ate like a person with a plan who also didn't have to chew sadness. Wednesday was desk nacho day. She emptied the chili into a mug, microwaved it, then poured it over those seasoned crumbs, crowned with yogurt and pickled onions. A coworker walked by, paused, and said, "I didn't know we could have fun here." Maya slid over a second spoon. "We can." Thursday's lunch emergency, a meeting that 8 noon, triggered Plan B, the drawer save. She assembled 5-minute couscous in a paper cup. 1/3 cup couscous from a zip bag, a pinch of salt, hot water from the kettle, a glug of oil, a squeeze of lemon, lid on. 3 minutes later, she forked it fluffy, stirred in a pouch of tuna someone had left in the community shelf, added red pepper flakes, and ate standing up while a printer complained about toner. It wasn't pretty. It was not sad. Friday, she honored the office ritual. Out lunch, in budget. The team wanted tacos. She brought her own tortilla, Ruth would have cackled, and bought a side of carnitas to split, stretching it with her own slaw from a jar. The server gave her a look. Hybrid lunches were a gray area, but she tipped well, smiled respectfully, and no one went hungry, including the budget.
She kept a page in the notebook titled Work Lunch Laws. 1. Dress leftovers at the office. Keep the base plain and add crunch, acid, or heat at 12:02. The transformation is morale. 2. Never microwave fish. This is not a law, this is civilization. 3. Soup plus starch equals stamina. Add a biscuit if the day looks mean. 4. Protect the 20-minute window. Calendar it. Decline a meeting once a week with previous commitment. You committed to yourself. 5. Pack 1 extra lunch per week, for the day you forget or for someone who needs a hand. Label it free. Be nice to me. 6. Aromas are politics. Chili good, popcorn great, burnt cheese crimes prosecutable by side-eye. Then versus now, the thermos truth traveled intact. Hot food eaten from a container you trust makes a Tuesday less sharp. Ruth thermos clinked in a metal pail. Maya's snapped shut with a satisfying clit that sounded like boundaries. In the break room, her little rituals turned into micro-community. She started a toppings caboodle, a plastic caddy labeled Hot Crunch Bright, stocked with communal red pepper flakes, a shaker of everything bagel seasoning, a squeeze bottle of cheap hot sauce, and a jar of pickled onions that replenished themselves via grateful coworkers. A Post-it read, "Take some, leave something. Label, please." It worked more often than not. They also hung a lunch map, a marker board where people jotted what they brought and one trick they learned. Leftover roasted sweet potatoes plus feta plus arugula? Wow! J. Microwave scrambled eggs in a mug? Shockingly decent. K. Instant miso plus frozen spinach cube from home is soup in 90 seconds. M. The board made the room feel like school without the dread. Maya's favorite invention was freezer soup cubes. She froze broth in an ice tray labeled "not drinking ice" because some lessons are painful, popped 2 into a deli container with peas and rice, and microwaved it at noon. It tasted like the building had a hearth. On a rough week, she deployed the nap desk. 10 minutes, eyes closed, noise-canceling headphones playing Rain, and a do not disturb status that meant it. Ruth would have called it a union break, and she would have been correct.
At month's end, Maya did a lunch audit like Ruth used to tally coupons. What worked, what went to the compost of good intentions, what surprised her. Wins: desk nacho kit, grain jars, soup cubes, drawer pantry. Misses: mason jar salads left too long. Dressing in the bottom is gospel. Still, day 4 is a villain. Upgrade: invest $6 from future headaches for a decent leak-proof thermos. Sad soup in a backpack is character building exactly once. Joy: square of chocolate after lunch tastes like a raise. Community: the toppings caboodle made 3 new work friends. Sauces are introductions. She wrote one last line under work-lunch laws. Lunch is a love letter to afternoon you.
She stuck it to the inside of her locker with painter's tape. The microwaves hummed, the fridge sighed, and the printer announced another paper jam that would take a village. Maya tucked the extra lunch, free, "Be nice to me," on the middle shelf. It was gone by 12:40, replaced with a note, "Thank you. Big meeting. You saved me." Signed with a smiley face that looked suspiciously like the boss's assistant. The $20 could not fix the whole economy from a break room, but it could build a small republic of soups and toppings, of jars and jokes, of not sad desks. And that felt like governance she could believe in. Seasons had a way of moving through Maya's kitchen like houseguests. Summer breezed in with bare feet and peaches. Winter arrived with boots, a long coat, and a desire to stand near the stove. Ruth's notebook carried a thumb-smudged calendar where each month had a thesis. June equals salad for dinner. August equals sauce. October equals roast. January equals soup with opinions. Maya flipped to a fresh page and wrote a seasonal swap. Same $20, new rules. Because if the 20 learned to speak summer and winter, it could buy flavor in 2 different languages. Summer bounty, tomatoes, corn, cheap sunshine. Summer's math was volume and velocity. Food arrived fast and in chorus. Zucchini like rabbits, tomatoes like gossip, corn like fan mail. The trick was to catch it before it turned on you. Saturdays, Maya became a traffic cop for produce. She set up the blanching station like a check-in desk. Pot of boiling water, bowl of ice, towel brigade. Peaches dunked till their skins sloughed like silk. Tomatoes slipped out of their jackets and into the blender. She made August sauce. Garlic, onions, tomato seconds, basil stems for backbone, and froze it flat in zip bags like red books in a tiny library. Corn had a tradition. Shave kernels into a bowl, scrape the cobs with the back of the knife to gather the milk, sauté with butter and scallions, salt like a prayer, and squeeze lime. Half went to dinner with a fried egg and a tomato wedge. Half froze in scoops to become winter chowder that tasted like a memory. Zucchini, relentless, met a box grater and formed frittered diplomacy. Salted, squeezed, stirred with egg and flour, pan-fried till frizzled at the edges, topped with yogurt and a squeeze of lemon. The neighbors learned that bringing Maya zucchini meant leaving with fritters. Fair trade, summer edition. Her freezer door wore a new map. Top left, August sauce, flat bags, stack like tiles. Top right, corn scoops, labeled sun pebbles. Bottom left, stone fruit compost. Peaches plus sugar plus squeeze of lemon. Bottom right, veg scraps bag. Summer version equals herb stems galore. Then versus now, Ruth's summer chapters smelled like canning marathons. Water bath symphonies, jars pinging like applause. Maya was a small batch freezer devotee. Renter's electricity, renter's shelf space. Different tools, same gospel. Catch the season, bank it. Summer protein tilted cheap by creativity. Beans dressed to thrill, chicken thighs grilled over a stovetop grate, tofu marinated in soy and ginger and kissed by a pan so hot it made the smoke alarm practice scales. Salads were meals because she taught them to be. Grains plus greens plus something loud. Pickled onions, olives, feta if the budget flirts. Bread didn't bake, it toasted. The oven kept its dignity. The fan worked overtime. Winter bones, cabbage, onions, root cellar vibes. When the light went thin and the bus stops felt unkind, the kitchen changed key. Winter wanted depth, bones, broth, braised, the low tap of a lid rattling as steam negotiated. The $20 bent its shoulder to the work. Book beans, sacks of potatoes, a head of cabbage that could be 4 dinners if you treated it like a friend with layers. Maya wrote Winter Starter Pack on a sticky note and stuck it to the pantry. 10-pound potatoes, split with a neighbor if storage is cramped. 3-pound onions, they will all show up for rehearsal. 2 heads of cabbage, green for skillet, Savoy as the price smiles. Dried beans, navy, pinto, lentils for emergency elegance. A small roast of chicken thighs when the yellow sticker winks. Bones equals Tuesday medicine. Vinegar, red wine and apple cider, and a jar of pickles. Acid equals light switch. She ran the Sunday braise like a ceremony. Onions softened until sweet, a cheap cut coaxed into tenderness with time. Carrots cut only once because knives have moods. The oven hummed at 300 degrees F like a radiator with purpose. The pot perfumed the apartment, and by extension the hallway. Half her floor accidentally timed their laundry to walk past at the hour the aroma turned persuasive. Out of that pot came a week. Night 1, braise on polenta. Cornmeal from the summer discount bin, now a winter blanket. Night 2, shredded meat folded into cabbage with vinegar and chili. Call it skillet pierogi. Night 3, broth rinsed into barley, mushrooms, and thyme. Call it forest soup. Night 4, potatoes smashed into patties, pan-crisped in fat saved from the braise, topped with an egg, the universal apology for a long day. When storms threatened, she made radiator kimchi light. Cabbage salted and squeezed, chili flakes, ginger, garlic, a touch of sugar, jammed into a jar on the counter for 2 days. Not authentic, entirely healthful. Winter food needs something that bites back. Then versus now, Ruth's winter pantry wore a crown. Basement chest freezer, canning shelf, a cold garage that behaved like a walk-in cooler. Maya had 4 shelves and ambition. The swap was strategy, not square footage. She cut root veg smaller to speed the roast. She leaned on lentils that softened fast. She turned her oven on at night when the building's heat already paid for warmth.
The shoulder seasons, spring nudge, fall hug. Spring whispered, peas, tender greens, eggs for cheap when the hens remember their job. Maya made green rice, cilantro, parsley, scallion blitzed with oil, folded into hot rice with lemon. Tossed with beans, it became a lunch that felt like a pep talk. Fall said squash and apples and stock on repeat. She built a roast everything bowl. Roasted cube squash, onions, and chickpeas, dressed warm with maple mustard. A teaspoon of maple syrup counted as joy and morale. Topped with pepitas, when on sale, or toasted breadcrumbs, always on sale because freezer heals. Tasted like a sweater. Swaps that keep $20 honest. Maya wrote a 2-column cheat sheet in the notebook. Summer to winter. Tomatoes, frozen August sauce pucks. Basil, parsley stems and lemon zest. Corn, sun pebbles and chowder. Zucchini fritters to potato pancakes. Same technique, different body. Salad for dinner, slaw under stew. Crunch in comfort. Grilled chicken, braised thighs with crispy skin finale. Winter to summer. Broth soups, cold bean salads. Same beans, less steam. Braised leftovers, tacos with slaw, acid migration. Potatoes, smashed cucumbers. Same smash, different vibe. Cabbage skillet, cabbage slaw with ginger lime. Soda bread, panzanella with toasted stale bread and tomatoes. Hot tea, sun tea with lemon wheels and bragging rights. The group chat adjusted with the weather. In July, Antonio, tomato seconds at the market. Who wants in on a sauce party? Priya, I've got basil stems and ice. Bring your blender. Maya, I'll label bags.
August and November is a love litter. In January, Renee, bakery donated Day-O loaves, great for bread pudding. Maya, I'll trade bread pudding for bones, stock emergency. Luca 1A, I can carry heavy stuff, payment equals croutons. They built season kits in a plastic bin by the pantry. Summer kit, funnel, food mill, zip bags, Sharpie, popsicle molds for morale. Winter kit, bay leaves, whole peppercorns, sachet bags for spices, oven thermometer, an extra jar of vinegar. On a snow day, Maya made citrus rescue, slicing oranges, lemons, and 1 grapefruit into a jar with honey and ginger. Hot water over, steeped in a mug, delivered sunshine to her bones. She texted the recipe to the chat. 3 coughs subsided, 1 neighbor cried, pleasantly, and the bin of season kits gained a permanent jar labeled Citrus Hope. Then versus now, she wrote, the season used to be a boss, dictating menus by what trunks could reach your town and what the root cellar hadn't forgotten.
Now, the season was a coach. You could get strawberries in January if you wanted to pay extra. But the wins came when you played the home game. Buy what's good now, preserve like you're on speaking terms with February, and swap techniques instead of budgets. She taped a strip of paper over the stove that read, cook like weather, save like memory, season like you mean it. Summer would come back, Peaches rehearsing backstage. Winter would arrive again in a coat and ask to stand by the stove. The 20 would keep learning both dialects, light and bright, deep and slow. And the table would keep translating. The notebook had grown heavy, not with pages. It had always been light enough to tuck behind the mugs, but with a kind of gravitational pull. Every grocery run, every simmer and stir, every neighborly trade had stitched new weight into its ginger ale pink cover. One night, with the first cold storm skittering its fingers along the window, Maya set the notebook beside her laptop and decided the past and the present should finally sit in the same chair. On the screen, a spreadsheet with 4 familiar tabs, neat as pantry jars. Tab 1, 4 envelopes, formulas that stacked rent, utilities, groceries, and joy into their corners. Conditional formatting that turned cells green when a week came in under plan. Soft amber when it needed a nudge. In the header, she'd typed, Pay in Foresight. Tab 2, Then versus Now. 2 columns that had become a chorus. Cabbage to slaw or skillet. Chicken bones, Tuesday medicine. Coupons, apps. Cashiers who know your name, lanyard saints who quietly fix the total. Between the columns, a thin gray line like an aisle you could walk both ways. Tab 3, Pantry Map. Inventory with dates, tiny notes that said, freeze this flat, use with lemon, Renee likes this soup, and a checkbox that read, shared, for anything that had left her apartment and returned in the form of scallions, stories, or thanks. Tab 4, $20 project. A ledger of receipts and what they failed to capture. Ezra's wink, the token match that made greens sing, the way a pot of beans steadies a week, the punchline from the kid in 1A that made chili taste brighter. She glanced at Ruth's handwriting, loops, arrows, recipes with verbs for measurements, and started translating. Bone in is budget's best friend, became a note in the $/protein cell. Prefer thighs, render fat, save cap, broth equals 3 meals. Vinegar before salt became a column called Adjusters that reminded her, and anyone she'd share this with, that acidity is a light switch, not an afterthought. Half an hour in, the spreadsheet began to feel less like math and more like a map, a way to hand the trail to someone else without losing the landmarks. She exported a clean copy and named it Ruth and Maya Pantry Arts.xlsx, because sentimentality wears well on files you intend to keep. She texted her dad a photo, the notebook on top of the laptop, like an elder blessing a teenager.
He replied with a heart and a blurry snapshot of Ruth at a kitchen table, scissors in hand, coupons like petals around her. He'd say you're making the recipe easier to pass down, and then he'd tell you to add a little more salt.
Outside, the storm found its rhythm. Inside, the radiator clinked along like a metronome. Maya put a pot on. Onions first, because every good paragraph starts with an honest sentence, and set out 3 bowls, hers, an empty one for whoever might knock, someone usually did, and one in her head for then. The place where 20 wore bell-bottoms and a grocery clerk rang numbers by hand. While the onion softened, she opens a notebook to the first page she'd ever written in, the $20 project. Under it, she'd added, over the months, the rules that worked and the ones that didn't, the hacks worth keeping and the ones that required a level of patience only saints and sourdough possessed. She took a fresh page and wrote, for the last time in this book, the way you write when you mean to put something in the walls. The $20 promise for anyone who finds this. 1. Start with people. A 20 stretches further in a neighborhood than it does alone. Trade, text, wave, label, share. 2. Trust the perimeter of the store, of the week, of the pot. The edges are where honesty lives. 3. Broth is a time machine. Save bones, save scraps, save yourself at 6:45 p.m. on a hard Wednesday. 4. Season like you mean it. Acid wakes up cheap. Heat gives it courage. Salt tells the truth. 5. Bank the season. Sauce in August, bones in January, lemons whenever spirits need a lift. 6. Defend morale. 1 bag of slap-you-back chips, 1 fancy lemon, 1 playlist that makes the room taller. 7. Name your leftovers. Not again, but next. Crunch or cream or bright. Change the texture, change the mood. 8. Pay in foresight. Batch beans, freeze wins, write the label your future self deserves. 9. Mind false economies. Buy cheap, buy twice. Buy right, buy once. Buy smart, buy peace. 10. Count what isn't on the receipt. Kindness, tokens, shared toppings, Renee's quiet code, Ezra's grin, the smell of onions when the day is long. She underlined people and broth and enough because those words had become the true currency. The pot behind her let out a friendly sigh. A knock. On her welcome mat, a paper bag with 2F scrawled across it and a note clipped by a clothespin. From the pantry, mushrooms that need love, parsley stems, and a lemon. R. Renee's timing was either coincidence or choreography. She folded the mushrooms into the pot, listened to them whisper their steak-adjacent secrets, squeezed the lemon, and ladled soup into 2 bowls. She carried one next door and set it by Renee's frame with the same clothespin. $20, returned and reimagined. Back at her table, she opened an email draft addressed to her building. Subject line, Ruth and Maya's $20 kitchen kit. Free, shareable. With a link to the spreadsheet, 3 favorite recipes in plain language, and a note. If you need a stock jar or a first grocery list, knock. If you have an extra onion, knock louder. She hit send and felt the apartment grow 1 size bigger again. Then she did a small, ceremonial thing. She wrapped the notebook in brown paper like a schoolbook and wrote, in block letters, "For the next cook." She slid it onto the top shelf, reachable with a stretch. The spreadsheet would travel by phones. The notebook would travel by hands. She ate her soup, the kind where the spoon can stand up if you ask it nicely, and let her mind walk the aisle between then and now. Ruth at a register with a 20 and a principal. Maya at self-checkout with a 20 and a loyalty app she hadn't given her birthday to. Same cart, different wheels. Same hunger, different math. Same dignity. The storm quieted. Somewhere down the hall, the kid in 1A practiced trumpet again. This time the notes were sentences. Maya washed the pot, left it to dry, and turned off the kitchen light. In the reflection on the dark window, she could see both the past and the present. Coupon scissors and QR codes, chest freezers and freezer maps, casseroles and toppings bars, church pantries and community fridges, S&H stamps and market tokens knocking against each other like wooden coins in a pocket. It all added up to a single theorem. Enough is not a number, it's the way we feed each other. She set the last line in the spreadsheet footer, and, because Ruth would have insisted, in the notebook too. $20, then versus now. Still dinner, still story, still us. And that was the finish. A pot that remembered, a plan that flexed, a neighborhood that kept answering the door. The 20 would never be magic again. It didn't have to be. It only had to be honest, seasoned, and shared.